My co-host for today is our friend Jack Rowland. I'd love to ask Jack to introduce himself to you. Hi, Jack.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. And yeah, we have a lot of science here today, so we will truly feel like nerds, I feel like. And yeah, I just want to say thank you, Carolyn, and hello to everyone here. It's great to be working with Carolyn, and I'm super excited to co-host my very first Neuromuscular Information Research Day, or NIRD. We prefer saying nerd. It sounds more fun to say nerd, in my opinion. I'm an intern at Muscular Dystrophy Foundation Australia, where I support with advocacy and policy efforts. And as someone that has a neuromuscular condition myself, it is a pleasure to be with you all here today. And I'm really looking forward to spending the afternoon with everyone here.
Thank you so much, Jack. It's wonderful to see a strong turnout this afternoon. I did know the sun would shine today, so we were inside on the computer on a sunny day, one of the first of many I hope to come in Sydney. But we do welcome people from throughout Australia today. We've got people throughout Sydney, New South Wales, and also people from interstate. So it's wonderful to see so many different people joining in on today's seminar. So thank you for wherever you've come from. I'm on the banks of the Parramatta River here in Burramaedical land in Rydalmere in Sydney. So if you did want to say hello in the chat, we'd love to hear from you, hear who's on the call, but also what land you're coming from. So before we go ahead any further, I would like to introduce our friend Olivia Eggleton to deliver our welcome to country. Olivia is our friend who often does the welcomes and acknowledgement of country for our events. Olivia, I'll pass over to you to introduce yourself and welcome everyone to today's NIRD. Could you please welcome Olivia Eggleton?
Hello everyone, I'm Olivia. I'm a second year university student studying at Western Sydney University. I'm part of the MD Student Life Group, and I'd like to welcome all of you to today's Neuromuscular Information and Research Day. I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the Darug land from which I'm attending, as well as the various lands throughout New South Wales from which we've all joined here today. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and to those of the future, for they hold the memories, traditions, and hopes of Aboriginal Australia. Thank you, everyone, and welcome.
Beautiful as always. Thank you, Olivia. That's lovely. Yeah, I'd like to also acknowledge the valuable lived experience from people with disability and neuromuscular conditions in particular, who are on the call today, but also our friends in our community that are not able to be with us here today, and also the friends that we've lost along the way. I'd like to pay my respect to the strength, resilience, and the wonderful community that we have here at Muscular Dystrophy New South Wales. Before we begin, a little housekeeping. I love to have a little tidy house. So let's talk about some of the ways that we'll work really well together today. We have 100 people registered for today, so it's a lot of people. Hopefully everyone comes, but I think we have over at least 50 people on the call so far. So because the event is being recorded, we'd love to see everyone's faces, but we do understand if you prefer not to show your face online, it is being recorded. So it will be put onto our YouTube channel. So do switch off your camera if you're eating or not wanting to share things at the time. We'll also be taking a few screenshots for our social media and our Talking Point newsletter. So again, just switch off your camera if you'd rather not be included on those, but we'd love to see your smiling faces by and large. Yeah, so due to the number of people on the call, we will keep people muted, but we will also have a lot of time for question time today. And I really would like to encourage everyone to think about engaging and asking questions and, you know, participating in the call at the time where we do have question time. So we'll get to that a little later, but for the most of the time, just keep yourself on mute. And we also have the power to mute people. So yeah, so everyone's going to be good. What else do we need to say? Oh, the view. So everyone has different, if you're on your phone or on your laptop or on an iPad or whatever have you, the buttons are in different places, but we recommend that everyone has their view on speaker view so that you actually see who's speaking. But also if you go to gallery, you'll see all of the wonderful faces on the line. It's also important to acknowledge that some of the topics that we talk about today might be hard. And please take a break if you like to, you know, that's fine if you need to to leave the room or go and, you know, take a call or what have you. But do remember there are services that can support people if they're not feeling great after different topics are being talked about, or just whether these topics raise issues for people. So Lifeline is available, you know, 24/7, and that's a really great service that you can talk to. I think Maddie will put the phone number for Lifeline in the chat, but we're also there in business hours at Muscular Dystrophy New South Wales. And there's also the Carers Gateway and the Disability Gateway that can refer you to some support services if you're needing that. So please keep that in mind. All right, so we've got a few hours ahead of us with lots of valuable speakers and topics today. So Jack, I'm going to get you to tell us, what is our lineup looking like?
All right, everyone. So here's what we have in store, and I like to use the term nuggets for like valuable nuggets of information. I heard that term a few years ago, and just that kind of stuck with me. And yeah, we really hope today you'll benefit from all the information that we are going to share, but obviously we'll leave it up to you to digest. So we'll be kicking off with an update from the Australian Neuromuscular Disease Registry. After that, we'll have an awesome lived experience panel, and they'll share lots of insights on how to get the support you need. I'm particularly looking forward to this one as well, because it's really nice to hear from lived experiences of people. We'll have a short break after this. Then following that break, we'll hear a really common topic for people with neuromuscular conditions, keeping muscle strength versus managing fatigue. We'll then have a clinical research and treatments update. So for all the science nerds out there, please do look forward to that session. And finally, we'll hear about MD New South Wales and what they can do for you and your family. And I've particularly enjoyed the community events and the support. One of my support coordinators is from MD New South Wales, and yeah, really value all the support. And unfortunately, our speaker for the dentistry session can no longer make it today. So that session will not be running today. However, there is no need to fear. It's still a very important topic. So we'll host it as an InfoShare session around early next year.
Thank you so much, Jack. Yes, we will make sure we put that as an InfoShare session, because we'd already got some engagement about that session. So I was very disappointed that we're not able to bring that speaker to you today. But we have connected with a great speaker at a special needs dentist practice in Adelaide. Apparently, I didn't know, but apparently Adelaide specialty is dentistry. So my dentist at Westmead told me about the Adelaide practice, and they'll be speaking to us, and that'll go on the calendar for 2026. Early in the new year. So yeah, thanks, Jack. So we've got to kick off. We've got a wonderful speaker here, Dr. Epi Yu. Hello, Epi. You're coming to us all the way from Toronto, Canada today, which is wonderful that you've made time very late in the evening. You're a clinician, researcher, and lead of the neuromuscular program at the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne. You're at the Murdoch Children's Research Institute. So those of us in Sydney always hear about Murdoch and the wonderful work that you're doing down there. You're recently stepped into the principal investigator role at the Australian Neuromuscular Disease Registry. So yeah, I won't go on to read any more about you. We'd love to hear all about the work that the registry is doing and how families and people living with neuromuscular conditions can get involved in this work. Over to you, Epi. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yes, greetings from Toronto in Canada. Thank you for letting me go first. I know you had to shuffle the program a little bit. I'll just share my screen here, and can you see that, Carolyn?
Absolutely clear. Thank you.
Okay, how's that? Is that
perfect?
That looks okay. So thank you for the opportunity to talk today. I believe Robin Forbes sort of talked at, I think, one of these days, if it was last year or the year before.
Yeah, 2 years
about
ago.
The registry. Robin's been a critical kind of staff member of the registry for many years. She's on leave at the moment, so I thought I would step in and give this update to you. So thank you for the opportunity. So, oops, it's not moving forward. So these are my disclosures, some funding that I have received, including for the registry work that we do. So a lot of you may have heard about the registry, but if you haven't, this is a national registry for children and adults with neuromuscular disorders. It's designed to represent what we see in Australia, but we do form part of a very large alliance called the Treat NMD Alliance, which is a global network of a whole lot of different registries across across the world for neuromuscular disorders to really try and increase visibility and help push what we all need forward internationally. And you can see here on the right our little schema of, you have an advisory committee. I saw Michelle Farah, who's a committee member, as are you, Carolyn, so we always appreciate your input. You can see here some of the conditions that we have, ones that you might expect, such as Duchenne muscular dystrophy, spinal muscular atrophy, FSHD, myotonic dystrophy, the limb girdle muscular dystrophies, congenital myopathies and congenital muscular dystrophies. We are going to add, we're in the process of adding more of these in, so we have full coverage of all the different types of neuromuscular disorders that we see here in Australia. So why do we have a registry? I mean, there's lots of registries around the world. There's lots of registries for lots of conditions, and they all kind of share very common themes. And so what we like to do in the registry is we're basically collecting data both cross-sectionally, so in a time point, but over many, many years if possible, looking at genetics, demographic data, so basic things about age, where people live, what services they might be able to access or not, and of course some of the clinical and treatment information for those conditions. And registry is a really, really good source of what we call real world data, what actually really happens in real life over many, many years. Because a lot of the time when you see publications, it's often maybe in the context of a clinical trial where criteria and who can get into the trial are very, very sterile and limited. And so over time, you don't really get a good feel for what's happening within a clinical trial, but when you use real world data, you really do. And it allows you to compare different things about what's happening and potentially across different parts of the world to see what people can access in terms of therapies and potentially what outcomes may differ. We're here particularly, the big one is to facilitate clinical research, and we can do that by collaborating both nationally, internationally, including with this Treat NMD network that I already mentioned. And that's because, as a lot of you know, neuromuscular disorders are as a group rare, but individually rare. And so no one country is enough to kind of collect the amount of information that you need to get really good information about a particular condition. And in the registry, we do collect things about what services are accessed, who has had a physio assessment, who needs ventilation support, etc. So it really helps us kind of understand what medications are being used, what medications may be needed, what services are being accessed, and where the care gaps may be, to try and highlight that and move forward any maybe data for government or even for just local services, for example. And we also use the registry sometimes to attract clinical trials to Australia so we can access the advanced therapies, new treatments coming as soon as they become available in clinical trials. So I mentioned this Treat NMD Global Registry Network. This is the most updated figure I could find from Treat NMD. There's probably closer to 70 member registries at the moment from around the world. You can see very good representation, not as many in the African countries, but very much you can see that it's a really nice representation globally of what's happening with many, many thousands of patients and many different genetic diagnoses. So a very, very powerful resource if you can collect all of that together in one go. So a little bit about how we work with our registry. We, like any research project, you have to have inclusion criteria. So basically, who can come into the registry? So as I said before, it's any children or any adult who's got a neuromuscular disorder. The one thing we do stipulate is that patients need to have a genetic confirmation to enter the registry at this point in time. We do allow patients who have deceased, and it's really lovely to acknowledge them, Carolyn, at the start of this meeting, to actually have them included in the registry so that they are remembered, and that we do see what happens with some individuals do not survive or may pass away at a very young age or at an older age, and it's really nice to actually have that data. And when we've spoken to parents of young children maybe that have passed away, they do feel like that they still contribute and have their children remembered in the registry, for example. We use data collecting the Treat NMD, what they call the core data set. So essentially the idea is that if you're a Treat NMD registry, everyone collects the same sort of data so that you can actually combine them, because there's no point if Australia collects something one way and then in Germany they collect it a different way, in New Zealand they collect it a different way. It really makes it difficult to combine that information together. And so this is called data harmonization. It's where you collect the data in the same way, and it means that you can group them together and collect more powerful information globally. And we collect lots of different things. We ask very basic things about where you live, what your sex is, maybe what condition you have, how old you were when symptoms started, what treatments you're on, what symptoms you may have, if you require a wheelchair or not. These are just some examples of some of the things that we collect. And we collect this over time. It's usually every 12 months. We have what's called a data update. At the moment, we do it on the phone, but soon we will have the ability for some patients to enter their own data in a little questionnaire online. And we collect this data over time to see how things change. And just an idea of how things are looking in terms of how many patients are in the registry nationally. We took over the registry in 2020. It was initially based in Western Australia within a kind of a government agency. And the reason it came to Melbourne at the Murdoch Children's Research Institute was so that it was within a clinical setting with people that understood, I guess, the more clinical needs and care gaps and what we wanted to do with the data. So from 2020 to 2025, this is our most recent data. You can see that we have over 900 patients. And whoops, you can see here in the different colours the numbers of each specific condition. And so common things we have more of, and more of the rare neuromuscular conditions there are fewer of, as you would expect. So you can see here, if you look at in our July kind of most recent or last quarter of 2025 that we're up to now, the big groups are Duchenne muscular dystrophy and Becker muscular dystrophy in blue. Purple is spinal muscular atrophy, green is myotonic dystrophy, red facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy, and then we've got also limb girdle, congenital myopathies and congenital muscular dystrophies making up smaller amounts, but certainly you can see yourself represented there potentially. So we have had some conference presentations and publications in recent years. I have to thank Michelle Farrer and her team. We had a really lovely collaboration looking at the SMA data published in 2024 last year. And then it was really nice. I've talked about Treat and NIRD repeatedly, but it was really nice to be able to pull together to describe the global experience of the more rare myotonic dystrophy type 2. Type 1 is a more common one, to contribute data together into this international publication that was also published late last year. And sometimes we go to conferences and present data either as a presentation or as a poster. And this poster was showing basically a focus on Duchenne and Becker muscular dystrophy in Australia, looking at genetic types, who was on steroids, who's not on steroids, and some of the clinical characteristics. A bit small to look through, but you can just see the idea of really getting our data out there and making people aware of the registry. And so sometimes we do a deeper dive and looking at our example here of data from the spinal muscular atrophy part of the registry. We can look at, how genetics might relate to the severity or type of spinal muscular atrophy. We can see, I always find this graph really interesting. Whoops, sorry, my computer's very touchy today. How the medication that has been reimbursed through the pharmaceutical benefits scheme for SMA, how that has changed in children and adults in the darker purple over time. You can see here in 2018 when the first drug was approved, but not yet really available in adults, and then in 22, 23, having more and more patients access the drugs in adult neurology circles. We can see things about how children or adults may walk, depending on what type of SMA that you have. So here, type 1, you can see that, I always find this interesting because patients might ask, my child has type 1 spinal muscular atrophy. Is my child going to walk? And that's often the, the million-dollar question if they're treated when they already have symptoms. And you can see here that, there are some children who are treated and are able to walk. Obviously, most do not, but there are some that do. And those that are treated before they have symptoms are all ambulant, at least in our data set. Some of these are quite small numbers, and as over time, we will continue to get more patients enrolled and have more data on some of these other patients. I mentioned before that we can get some information about how children and adults access different services. So for example, here you can see in people who have SMA, in adults versus children, green shows that someone has seen a physiotherapist and had one of what we call a motor outcome measure performed, like a score of how they're doing for SMA. You can see that many more children than adults have been able to access this. So in the adults here, the green bar is actually small, whereas in the children, the green bar is much higher that have actually seen a physio and had a proper motor outcome measure performed. And it's really something that we need to see and understand how we're going to improve our transition and access to services as children go from from children into adult care, pediatric into adult care. We also ask patients sometimes what we call patient-reported outcomes. So what they think or what parents think about their child. This is an example for spinal muscular atrophy. We ask the patient themselves, or we ask the parent or carer of the child how they feel SMA impacts them. So they might think that, you're not at all affected in green, severely affected in the very dark red, and in between are the different colours there. So we always like to know how patients are also travelling and what their impression of how life is. I thought I'd mention a little bit about clinical trials and getting new drugs into practice and how a registry does have a role to play. We do know that, clinical trials are essential to translate drugs in development in a basic science lab into clinical practice, where we as doctors prescribe a drug and the patient takes the medication. And when you've got very rare diseases in particular, it's very challenging to recruit and enroll into clinical trials. And sometimes we can use registries to understand how many patients with a particular condition, regardless of how common or rare it is, might live in a particular country or a particular area. And sometimes pharmaceutical companies may want to know how many patients with a particular condition actually live in Australia. And we have had inquiries about that from time to time, for example, for limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. And so sometimes you can have registries help attract clinical trials into countries, and in some countries and some registries, they actually use that registry as a pre-screening for getting trials into that country. And sometimes some registries actually use the registry to enroll into or assist in enrolling into clinical trials, and they're kind of different stages of how much you might use a registry along that. So, registry does really help with these sorts of things. And when new drugs are shown to be effective, registries can also provide important information for applications for approval of drugs with the Therapeutic Goods Administration and for reimbursement with the PBS, because governments want to know how many patients are there, how much will this actually cost. And for advanced therapeutics, so for, when we're thinking about gene therapy and potentially having gene therapy for not just spinal muscular atrophy, but other conditions where it's quite complex how you administer it, it's actually important to understand where are these patients and think about the logistics of how you might actually administer these advanced therapies to patients depending on where they actually live and what hospital or what centre they would be able to get to access those drugs. There's always lots of challenges and barriers with registries. These are some here, as you can imagine: sustainability, having enough funding, enrolling patients and maintaining patient engagement, because, there's always fatigue with research studies. Having to, have a data update every 12 months, it seems like quite far out, but it comes around quite quickly, and trying to maintain that, trying to contact patients to do that can be quite challenging as well. Trying to maintain data quality is an increasing challenge when you've got more and more patients, you're collecting more and more data. How do we actually deal with that? So these are some of the challenges, and resources for staff and other things are something that it's always on our mind in the registry. So recruitment, this is not a dobbing board or anything like that, but just to show that because, the Murdoch is based in Victoria and Melbourne, so we, as you would expect, have more patients recruited in Victoria than other states. We've also got quite a lot of pediatric patients, just being a children's hospital, and we tend to have a bias towards probably pediatrics more so than adults, knowing the relative populations of children versus adults in Australia with neuromuscular disorders. So always keen to have ideas about how to improve recruitment. We've got lots of partners with all the patient representative groups who we're always very grateful do let their members know about the registry and encourage recruitment. In the interest of time, I think I won't play this video, but essentially you can Google us. You just type in ANMDR, click in there. There's a little tab. I might just stop it there. You just say register your interest. You fill in your details and you will have a registry staff member contact you by phone and or by email to have a little talk to you about what it involves. We do have to consent patients before we collect any information, including whether or not someone has a genetic diagnosis, of course. But always keen to hear from patients. So I think this is almost my last slide, just conscious of time. So, what do we talk about in the registry? What do we talk about when we have committee meetings? We talk about trying to increase our profile nationally, particularly in adult neuromuscular clinics. We find that the pediatric neuromuscular service is a little bit more coordinated, whereas adult services, as some of you may experience, are probably a little bit more fragmented. We want to increase how we can use the registry. We would like the registry to help enrol for other clinical research projects. We would like the registry to, maybe have patients consent to be contacted by the National Muscle Diseases Biobank, for example, which is also based in Melbourne, and or maybe other projects that maybe want to be run from Sydney, New South Wales, Perth, or other places. We would like to use the registry for clinical trial targeting. So we would like the registry to be able to contact patients' clinicians about potentially relevant clinical trials that their clinician may not be aware of. We're trying to improve infrastructure, how we actually use our database, how to improve how we might extract data from electronic medical records, and of course, thinking about what data we can analyse to get out there and or use for other purposes. And we're always looking to consult with patient groups, industry and regulators to work out how the registry can be useful to all these different people. So these are our contact details. That's our website. You can ring us, although we find a lot of the time people don't answer phones these days when we call. So we also spend a lot of time contacting our participants by email. There's a lot of people I like to thank, of course, all of our participants of the registry, all the people we contact, neurologists, nurses, allied health clinicians. We're constantly trying to get data for the registry. I've listed our current registry staff. Thank you very much to our advisory committee, particularly to Michelle as well. And Carolyn, are you not on there? You're Carolyn here today. Our partners, particularly the patient organisations and funding support from a variety of different people, including pharmaceutical companies. And happy to take any questions if there's time, but I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Yu, for a lot of the really great insights and the informative start, being the first session of our day, starting up very strong. So very excited for the rest of the sessions. And I just want to take a moment to give just some key takeaways that I sort of had as mine. So I'm doing a Master of Public Health, and in terms of data, registries are one of the best things that we can do to collect data on a range of conditions outside neuromuscular conditions as well. Cancer registries are a very popular thing that is done as well. So just hearing about the registry and seeing all of the future and what that holds is really awesome as well. And also around attracting more research and helping support treatment, like being able to utilize this information for, say, governments to feel like what is the best thing that we can do to support people with neuromuscular conditions. And another piece that I just wanted to highlight was the empowerment of individuals when we actually have the data and we can do something with it. And I know as someone with a neuromuscular condition myself, I would love to, be involved with this and just see what data we have in Australia and the world. And with that, I will hand back over to Carolyn for Carolyn to facilitate some questions.
Thank you, Jack. That was great insights. And thank you to Epi as well, Dr. Yu. Thank you so much for so clearly, I think, explaining the role of the registry. I think that was wonderful, very clear role, because, you know, it is a complex type thing, and I'm sort of always trying to spruik people to come and be on the registry and join. I know I joined myself 3 to 4 years ago, and I've had a really positive experience being on the registry. I think it's for me, I see it as a really lovely chance to catch up about my own SMA and check in with myself about how I'm doing, because on a day-to-day basis you just get on with life. But I think it's a really good opportunity, and I've been speaking with a lovely woman who's unfortunately just retired. Lovely for her.
Yes.
Anna has been a lovely way of being able to check in with Anna and just speak to her about all of the questions that she has about my SMA. And it's been just starting treatment as well has been a really big change in my experience of SMA. So I think having the registry to speak to regularly, I think it was 6 months and now it's 1 year. So it's, it's not a huge investment of time. I do encourage all of our community to see if they can join on to the registry, because as Jack said, this is how we get data, this is how we get information, it's how we track progress of people, what do they call it, natural progression plus
natural history.
History, that's it. So I'd love to hear if there's any questions about the process or what's involved. If anyone's got any questions at all, it's a really great opportunity to speak to Epi at this time and ask her what's involved, because that's how we get people. Is there any questions in the chat there, Maddie? I think
there's a question from Jane. I can see, Carolyn. Can you self-register, or does it have to be a medical professional?
Take that one?
So as Michelle has answered, you basically self-register. We tried to take it away from the busy clinicians kind of list of things to do. I even know myself, sometimes I'm sitting there in clinic and I forget everything apart from the patient in front of me. You can self-register. We sometimes do need some information either from your doctor or your treating clinician and or from medical records for genetic results, which sometimes patients actually have themselves. But essentially the first step is that patients can self-register. Sometimes we have clinicians that will also let us know that the patient has consented to be contacted, and then we can contact. But also we need to speak to the patient or the carer themselves to be able to do the consent on the phone usually, and we'll still need to fill out the consent form.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Jane. There's another one in there, and John, did you want to ask your question? John, are you with us? We'd love to hear from you. You there, John? Otherwise, I'll read the question. John's either shy or not with us. So I'll say that our registry is linked. For example, if you're on the global FKRP registry, I'm not sure what that stands for, does this information get captured in other neuromuscular registries?
That is a really, really, really good question. There are multiple registries. We're not particularly linked to that one, but sometimes we do ask, well, not sometimes, we do ask patients if they're also on another registry so that we know. And we do know that sometimes patients get confused which registry they're on because some people might be on 2 registries. We are linked to all the TreatMD national, TreatMD registries through that network. It's called the Global Registry Alliance. But we may not be linked with all the registries, but we do often ask patients if they are on any other registries.
Thanks, Epi. And there's one more question we might go to Rick. Hello, Rick. I've seen you in the room, but did you want to ask
Rick.
your question, Rick? Hello. Are you there, Rick?
I am. How are you, Carolyn?
Good, lovely to see you.
Yeah, you too. And congratulations, Dr. Epi. That was a lovely presentation.
Thank you, Rick. Nice to see you.
A very basic question, though. Is a natural history study, exactly, is that just the collection of data that you're after?
Yes. Are you talking about other like blood tests, etc., or are you talking about what do we do?
The process of a natural history study.
Yeah.
What exactly
Yeah, so a natural history study is what happens to that patient or group of patients with this particular condition over time. And so there are different ways you can do it, but it's usually over time. So it's over many, many time points, collecting whatever data that particular study has chosen to collect. So for us, it's whatever items we have in our registry, and we collect different types of data for each condition, dependent on the bigger treated MD data set. And sometimes we add our own questions in addition because we can. But there might be another, I think someone said they might be an FKRP registry, so they may collect different things. And sometimes there's more very detailed natural history studies as well, where they collect the data as you go each time. That's called a prospective one. Some are kind of retrospective, where you kind of look back at data over time. So there's different ways that you can do it. But essentially the idea is to see what happens over time.
If a specific virus, for example, had been attracted, or a person or a patient had a particular virus, is that sort of information recorded as well? Because that can be particularly interesting in terms of the treatment down the track.
I missed the start of that. Sorry.
My question was just in terms of viruses and that sort of thing. Do you go into that depth of study to find out what sort of viruses the patient may have through blood tests, etc.?
We don't do blood tests for our registry. We purely collect data from the patient or from the medical record. But there are some other studies that might also look at biomarkers of conditions. We do ask patients if they've been unwell with a respiratory or chest infection, for example. So we do collect that data depending, and the level of detail depends on which condition it's for our registry. But other studies may do it different ways.
Thanks, Andy.
No problem, Rick.
Just two more from the chat. Andrew had a question. Andrew, did you want to ask that one?
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. Yeah, just basically wondering whether or not the registry contacts people that are on the register, just to give them updates on, outcomes of, the collection of data. If there's any, yeah, I know you've been speaking to you handle quite a lot of different things like, speaking to Pfizer and all that type of stuff. But do you contact and let people know how things are going with the data?
You mean for an individual person?
No, I'm just talking as far as just people on the registry, just like an update.
Yeah, so on our website, we do have just very basic things. For example, at the moment, I think it just shows how many patients we have on the registry. We have talked about in our team about, putting other information or potentially sending out information if people are interested. I don't have a good feel for whether or not people read, your kind of once a year annual update, because we've all got email overload.
But you certainly do lots of these type of events, don't you, Epi? So that's probably one way that you're providing information.
Yes, yes, that's true. We do provide very basic kind of aggregate data on the website, but more specific stuff we haven't actually done, but it's certainly something that we could do. But we don't give individual feedback, obviously, because we don't have that capacity. And the patients often have their own data anyway for themselves, or they could speak to their clinician. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I am on other registries, and you register, and then I basically just haven't heard from them, so I don't know whether there's data, if they're still around. I don't know. So
yes,
yeah, it was just whether or not there's any sort of feedback type of process.
Yeah, ideally, probably yes, potentially annually a little bulletin if people are interested in reading, interested in your thoughts on that. But otherwise you would hear from us once a year as well, which I think sometimes is an opportunity for people to ask questions.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Epi. And there was just one more really lovely comment in the chat I wanted to read. I'll just read it out now, Tracy, because we do need to get on to our next session. But Tracy and Liam and Zoe are near here in the chat. Hi, guys. It's lovely to hear that you were able to contact the registry for your late husband, Michael, as well as for Zoe and Liam. So that's great. And you felt it also as an empowering, powerful act, and the staff were friendly and helpful. So it is a great thing to be able to do. I feel for myself, I hear what you're saying, and I feel like it's something we can contribute to the broader picture of things, because I think, that research and treatment can only happen when there's data and good information. So we can actually all play a part in that. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you, Tracy, for sharing. It's really lovely to
lovely
hear.
feedback. Yeah, really good. And yeah, I know that it's very busy for the registry as well. You're kind of, you know, hard to have enough staff to make all those calls, Epi. So
Yes.
you're doing a great job. But yeah, we might wrap it up there. If anyone else wants any other questions, I'm actually a patient representative on the committee that oversees the registry. So if anyone would like to bring anything to me, I can also put that through to the registry. So yeah, thank you, everybody. Could you all put your hands together and thank Epi, particularly because she's in Toronto, Canada, and it's probably way past midnight now, Epi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
You're
that.
most welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, Carolyn.
We
Really
really
appreciate it. Thank you for listening.
Well done. Excellent. All right, guys. So moving along, isn't it, Jake? We've got to move. You got to keep me the time, mate. Yeah, we're going to now move over to our lived experience panel, aren't we, Jack? Is that right?
Yes, we are. So feel free to take it away.
Yeah. So we're really excited. A few years ago, we started doing the lived experience panel. Last year, we had a single speaker. This year, we're back to having a wonderful panel, and I'm really pleased with the speakers that we've been able to capture sounds like they're in prison. We're able to book in for today. It's our wonderful friends Joe Aquinto, Chris Carrero, and Bridget Larson. Everyone say hello, guys. Hello. I'll do a little introduction, but basically our session today is about how do we get the support that we need. So very much from the horse's mouth, the people speaking have years of lived experience and really have been able to you know, show and kick goals in their own lives to make sure that themselves or their people that they support are able to access the best support. So yeah, this is really about empowerment, living the life we choose, how to live our best life, making the most of life, it's all things we aspire to, but actually how do we get there? How do we get the support that we need to thrive? So I'll just introduce all of our panel speakers and then, yeah, we'll kick off with our questions. So Joe is a credit analyst at Angle Auto Finance. In 2016, Joe established his own consulting group, iAccess Corp, focusing on disability access and training. Joe's a father of 3 and lives with SMA. It's my fellow smarty. Welcome, Joe. Chris Carrero. Chris is a proud dad of 5. You're stopping at 5, Chris. Please tell us you're stopping at 5.
I can't make any promises.
Next year it'll be 6. And Chris is his eldest son, Levi. Young Levi lives with Duchenne. And when you're not on the road for work, you're also leading our MD Dads group. So you've got a busy, busy man. So thank you for joining us, Chris. And then our third and absolutely not final speaker, I'm sure that we'll hear a lot more from you as we go on, Bridget. Bridget, you used to be a lawyer and now you're a full-time carer for your son who lives with Duchenne, and Jamie as well. Jamie, you're all in Canberra, you're in the ACT, and you're also caring for other family members. So you're in that sort of generation where you're caring for youngers and you're caring for olders at the moment. You're a regular at our Peer Connect events, and you've also started volunteering in the policy arena, I believe, Bridget. So thank you for all of your service to MD New South Wales. Yeah, could you all please welcome our lovely guest speakers for our panel? Clap, clap, clap. I'll pretend I'm hearing a round of applause. So Joe, I'm going to start with you. In what areas, Joe, have you been successful, because I know there are many, in advocating for your own needs? You've been a self-advocate for as long as I remember. Could you share some examples of how you've done this? And, you know, for example, so give us some of the practical things, Joe, that you've been able to advocate for and how you've been able to do that.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Carolyn, for that warm introduction, and hello, everybody. This is a very humbling experience, and I'm glad that I'm grateful that I've been invited to discuss and share my own experience. Carolyn, you need to remind me if I'm going too long, because I'm a very long talker.
I'll try to have a little bell.
I can entertain, but I think that people might get bored by the end of it. But so yeah, I'll say that I've been very fortunate in my life. But by saying unfortunate doesn't really give me credit for some of the decisions that I've made. And I think that our lives are about the choices and the decisions that we make. So from my experience, I have been working for nearly 30 years full time. I took initiative to get off the disability pension, in my early 20s and never looked back. I wanted to be able to earn money. I needed to get married. I needed to have a family, and there was no way I could do that. Or I could do it on the pension, but I think I needed to be a little bit more proactive in what I wanted to try and achieve. So with regards to advocating, it starts with family. Without a doubt, if my parents hadn't pushed me, and I had a younger brother who has the same condition, who passed away last year, but if they hadn't forced us, sorry, I shouldn't say forced, encouraged us to go out, to meet people, to socialize, to interact, to get work, I don't think I would be where I am today. So that was a big thing for them, and that gave us that. So I advocate for myself because I have to. I really don't give myself a safety net. I have a job to do. I've got a family. I've got a mortgage. I have got responsibilities. So when I first started working to advocate for myself, I had to make sure I had access. So I had where my place of employment was, there was a panel, keypad panel on the doorframe. They had to put it lower for me to be able to access it. I needed a key to the basement bathroom because where the bathroom was in the building, it was actually in the pub, in the bullpen, so to speak. That was my bathroom, nobody else's. So if I needed any assistance from somebody, like my dad might have to come help me onto the toilet, or my cousin, I couldn't do it obviously in that public space. So I got access to a basement bathroom, and they were able to provide that. When we moved from our Parramatta location to Bella Vista, this is in New South Wales, by the way, sorry. Then I was consulted on how to provide better access for myself. So I would give ideas, put a ramp in a certain spot, try and move things lower, try to provide alternative access. So they were the things that I needed to do. In terms of advocating as well, I noticed that there were buildings in the area nearby that didn't provide what I thought was proper access. Even there was one particular building that had a ramp that went down and then turned at 90 degrees. Now the ramp had a hand railing, and on the one side there was some wiring. But when you got to the bottom of the ramp before it turned right, there was nothing underneath it. And I pointed out that if I'd been going down there, or anyone else in a wheelchair, and it was raining, I could have slipped and gone right through. And I couldn't understand why they didn't have that. So it wasn't just about for me, but for anybody else that was going to be using that. So I made sure that I brought it to the attention of the right people, and they managed to fix that up, which was good. So they were very big things for me. As a self-managed NDIS participant, I have to organize my own support workers. I want to do that. I want to be involved in that. They help me with my showering, with my toileting, getting out of bed in the morning. Not in that particular order, I should have said. But they basically help me with all these functions. And I'm very grateful for what they do. By their participation, by what they do to help me, that gets me ready for the morning. I have a job to do. I'm lucky I work from home. My family is getting ready for their own things. My wife is a teacher. 2 of my kids are at university, and my youngest is in year 10. So they've got their own days. So I need to be able to get ready and do things and let them get away, let them do what they need to do without any sort of hindrance. So it is really important for me to be able to find the right people to make sure that we are on the right sort of footing and that we understand. And I'm very big on communication. I have things that I need, and I know that they have their needs as well. One thing I will say with support workers, and this is something I stress, there is an element of vulnerability. I am vulnerable. I am there. I have no clothes on. I am getting them to help me with some very private stuff. And I know that, and I accept that. And I don't hold any grudges about that. But from their perspective, there's also that element of vulnerability. So I am extremely conscious of what they are doing. And I try to build and facilitate a relationship where we both benefit from it. Yes, it's a paid job. I understand that, but it's not a black and white job. It's a very, very personal job. And I will share that these people are so close to me that when my brother passed away, they didn't really know him, but they came to the funeral last year, which was incredible, just to support me. And that was beautiful. And I know one of them is overseas at the moment. And I told them about this thing, and she said she was going to log in. I got my other support workers here in Sydney who are logging in or wanted to know if it was there. So it was such a beautiful thing that they were really interested to hear what was going on and really encouraging me to be a part of this. In terms of platforms, I use platforms like HireUp and Mabel when I want to find support workers. I'll put my job descriptions online, connect with people, and then I prefer to have a conversation. When I talk to people over the phone, I get a better understanding of who they are. Language can be sometimes a bit of a barrier. There might be some other things. So when I get a chance to talk to them, I'm able to gauge a better understanding of suitability, not just for me, but for them as well. And there have been a couple of times where I've been able to save a bit of time for both of us, where it just hasn't been a good fit, which is absolutely fine. And one of the big things that I look for when I'm trying to find the right person, I'm not necessarily looking for experience. I'm looking for a good person. I need to have people. We all have different levels of needs and disabilities. I've seen people on here that are waving their hands and saying hello. I can't do that. I wish I could do it, but I can't. But these people, if you have people that understand you, they will be able to provide at that level that you need. And everybody is different. We all have different needs. So I always look for someone who is the right person, who is able to learn from that. And if they're comfortable with me and I'm comfortable with them, then that works for me. So I've got about 6 or 8 support workers in general that help me. And I'm very, very fortunate to have them. And I'm not going to lie, and I'm not being arrogant when I say it. I'm a good person too. And I make sure that I provide for them. I'd like to take them out for a coffee every now and then. I like to share personal experiences, share my victories. If I'm struggling, I'll share where my struggles are as well. And I'm just extremely grateful and very fortunate to have that. So that's where I am.
Joey, I'm gonna stop you there. We could probably listen to you all afternoon. That's wonderful for you to share those anecdotes and lovely, really practical strategies. So thank you so much. We'll come back to you, but I did want to leave time for Bridget and Chris to also share their wisdom. So Bridget, I might pass it over to you. A bit of a different role for you because you're the mum of Jamie. So I wanted to hear from you, Bridget, about how you go about advocating on behalf of Jamie, and perhaps also what you've been able to do to teach him or support him, perhaps encourage him to self-advocate as well.
Sure. So I agree with everything that has just been said. What we do, Jamie is now 20. Very much his needs are at the centre of everything that we do. So, and those have transitioned over time. So we're always thinking, what is short term? What is medium term? What is long term? And I'm an annoyingly organised person, so I kind of break things into domains, and so I can keep an eye on them all the time. As a family carer, it's not a small job. It's takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of emotion. It takes a lot of planning. So I found myself thinking about it as so I jobify it. I treat it as I am the manager of a small company that runs a number of different things for one private client. And it's not as if I'm running it for, Kim Kardashian or anything, but he is actually far more important. And I need to consult with that client all of the time, which is, you know, what I do. And as Jamie's capabilities have grown, it's not just listening to what he needs, but it's saying, hey, what do you think? Jamie sits with me when we interview support workers. He gives me a lot of feedback. He's beginning to do a lot more of his arranging directly now when he organises his transports, when he's out at uni, etc. But I don't want to see, yeah, I do kind of jobify it, I suppose. And it just makes it a little bit easier. It makes it a little bit easier to say, this is very big, this is very difficult. I need to set aside time to do it. And I have to develop, you know, cheat sheets and checklists and things to make it work. But in terms of how I do it, I guess it's like any sort of form of communication. Advocacy is, you know, a form of communication. And when I think about it, I think about kind of who is communicating what to who, when and how. So who's the best person to advocate? Look, sometimes it's going to be me, sometimes it's going to be Jamie, sometimes it might be a third party. It might be best that certain things come from the deputy principal or from a GP. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. Being very clear on what you need. So what you need could be something very specific, but it also could be, look, I've got a bit of an issue with this. Can you help me with it? And I'm very conscious, I suppose, through policy and advocacy background of being aware of other people's interests as well. What are they trying to get out of it? So there are different approaches for different supports. In, if you look, you know, the Greek triad, of pathos and ethos and logos. Like if you're dealing with a government agency, they're really after the logical, tick the box. You're just going to have to follow the bouncy ball. They're not really as interested in the emotional side of it. But so there are just slightly different approaches with different supports. And I suppose with any support, being having solutions, going with options, being flexible, being open to alternatives. Some people might say, look, we don't have that, but we do have this. Could this work? So being open to those things. The next one is talking to the right person. Got to make sure you're talking to the right person who has the authority to make the decisions or has the information that you need. So perfectly okay to say, hey, who would you recommend I speak with about? Get the right person. Don't waste your time on people who aren't right. I think one of the things I've underestimated and learned a little bit over time is about when to communicate. Try and be organised when they're focusing on you, when they're receptive to you. That's the time to do it prior to school starting, not just as school starts. If you're talking with, you know, the support that your kid might have in the educational sphere. If talking about informal supports, I would never ring my mum and ask for support when she's just about to host a book club. I would always say, Mum, can we have some time to talk about diary? You know, when she's got a chance to sit down and have a good chat over a cup of tea. So the when is actually really important and shouldn't be underestimated. Then how to convey your message. So do you need a meeting? Is it a person-to-person thing? Do you need something more formal, like an email where you've got a bit of a record, or do you need heavy formal, which sometimes you need with a complaint or government, a letter? So think about the different modes of communication you've got. And I guess the other things I would add, always keep records. You know, my legal side said whoever is best prepared usually prevails, and this is particularly important when dealing with government. Confirm your next steps and actions. Be prepared to follow up. The other things, which is harder to sometimes do as a family carer, particularly when you're emotional or upset about things, be professional and polite at all times. The network is really small, and if you are very emotional, put it aside a bit, wait until you can calm down a little bit. The other thing I think is really important, and Joe touched on this as well, communicate your wins and your thank yous, like invest in it, share what's going well. People love that. And quite frankly. It keeps the door open for next time. So go the extra effort. I know people have really appreciated it, both our support workers, but also when we've left certain systems, like when Jamie graduated, when we left from the paediatric system, saying, hey, this went really well. It really helps others, but it also helps invest in those longer term relationships. And the other thing I'd say, and I've learnt this over time, at the beginning, I don't think we knew what we were doing, but just remember, you are the expert in you. Be confident and be prepared to say, look, that's not going to quite work for us. What we're after is this. You are the expert in you, and be confident with that. Yes.
Oh, Bridget. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for all those tips. I just wrote in there, you are the expert in you, because that is my so far quote of the day. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you, Bridget, but let's hear from Chris. Chris, you've got a younger son. Levi's, what, is he 8 now?
He's turning 10 tomorrow.
Oh my goodness, time just flies, doesn't it, in the blink of an eye. Chris, tell us about how you're going about advocating on for your son's needs, and you know, any kind of sort of issues or tips that you've got for people.
Yeah, it's great hearing from you, Bridget, and also from Joe. And I guess we all have different experiences in how we go about this advocation. For me, I really needed to understand what DMD was and what it involved. Obviously, having a big family, and I also have a daughter who is deaf and wears cochlear implants. And so there's a lot of complexities in our family. And for us, probably one of the things which I love is having a big family, because there's so much noise. There's always something happening. There's probably a child crying or someone stepping on someone. And then you've got the advocation for your son with DMD. And so for me, it's always about what's going to happen in his life. And it's great hearing from someone like Bridget, who's been there and been in my position and seen a lot of the challenges, and then understanding what sort of medications he's on, what supplements should he be taking, what vitamins should be taking, how do we navigate the NDIS, what sort of equipment does he need now? If we get a power wheelchair now, will that affect him getting a sit-to-stand wheelchair later? And so for me, the advocating is all about research. How can I better understand how to be the best father I can be for Levi and the rest of my family? And so for me, advocating, it's not just about Levi, it's also advocating with Levi's team in regards to what's going to work for my family at that time of day or during that week or month. I've got 5 birthdays to consider, plus my wife's, and so there's always something that we just got to navigate around. And for me, the number one thing that only I can do is be the best father I can for my family, and that involves advocating for Levi and ensuring that the rest of the children come along for the journey and that they're not negatively impacted too much by this, because it is such a big thing that we deal with, and DMD is such a big journey that we're on if you're on that DMD journey, and I want to make sure that my whole family are on that journey and enjoying that journey as much as we can, but not making everything about Levi. And so that's the challenge. That's the challenge of me advocating. It's Levi and fighting for his needs with either doctors or therapists or whatever, or schools or whatever it might be, but then also fighting for the voices of my other children so that they're heard as well.
Chris, that's so powerful. I always remember my mum saying, you know, the balance between myself and my sister really had to be there. There was so much time and energy spent on getting what I needed, but mum and dad also realized that my sister also needed things. So, you know, that balance is really key. So well done on articulating that so well. Yeah, let's look at what some of the challenges are and how do we overcome those challenges. You know, there's so many different challenges. I don't want it to be a negative, you know, a list of all the problems and the issues that we have, because we know there are many. But what actually are the things that help overcome challenges is probably more my question, and that can be to anyone on the panel.
I'm happy to jump in quickly on this one. I've got to admit that over the years, look, there have been many challenges and they've come in many different shapes and forms. And I get so, you do get emotional, and frustrated with this. So I've started keeping a list of what I call my annual Razzies Awards, where I actually write down who has done what and what they've done to infuriate me. And then it gets it sort of a little bit out of my system, but it
Quite
also means
cathartic
that
by the sounds of it.
it is very cathartic, but it also means that if I'm writing submissions, further down the track, I've got plenty of resources to draw on. So that's my sort of cathartic part of it. And without mentioning, some of the regular, award winners on that list, what it comes down to for me is there are three different challenges. One is arrogance, one is ignorance, and one is resource constraints. And I try and they sit in different places. So you might find more ignorance in, certain supports and a lot of resource constraints, for instance, with, the NDIS is probably ignorance and resource constraints, for instance. Arrogance, I sometimes find in the health sector. And I've got to approach each one differently. So with the arrogance, there's not a lot you can do to change that. So it's a matter of seeking an alternate path with or without speaking your truth on the way. With ignorance, you can educate for that. And there are a lot of people who just, they're so busy with all sorts of things. And we see this very much in the educational sector. So very much trying to take them some information on what Duchenne is, how it manifests. I created a little one-pager that I would go with every year. So any support teacher could take a quick look at it and go, oh, right, well, that's Jamie, and I can expect this, and this works, and these are kind of some of the things that I need to watch out for. So I would give them that information early before the school year started so that we're on the same page there. Resource constraints, different thing. Sometimes it's a matter of, well, how can I help you with this? We've had it getting local sleep studies, for instance. They go, oh, we don't have enough people to do that. So, well, can I help? Can we bring in our own support worker? Can we bring in our own this? He said, nothing's going to happen until the minister gets involved. And I said, that's fine. I'm very happy to write to the minister and we can get this sorted out. And funnily enough, they rang next week and said, well, we've had a cancellation. You could come in, So, and I guess, look, the other main resource constraint is your own time and emotional energy as a family carer. And as Chris just put it, about thinking, I cannot do everything that everybody recommends. I'm going to have to filter that. I'm going to have to think about that, how that fits with my family well-being holistically. And I'm going to pick and choose a little bit about what works. So that's always been a challenge, the mental load, the emotions, the triaging, and what works for my family, not just trying to tick every box that every person gives you. So that was my 2 cents worth.
Oh, that was an excellent 2 cents. That was more than 2 cents worth. That was about $2,000 worth. Thank you very much. Chris or Joe, have you got anything else to offer about some of the biggest challenges and how you've overcome them?
I'm happy to go next.
Sure, Chris.
I guess the biggest challenge at the beginning was coming to grips with the realization that my son had DMD. And that was massive, like over like the first week, the first couple of weeks, months to 6 months. It was just really like getting a deep understanding of what this meant. And if you've been in that position, it's the worst time of your life. And for us, we came to a realization the way for us to overcome that was to find out who we could speak to. And that's when we connected with MD New South Wales, and been a great organisation with so much support. We connected with Duchenne Australia, once again, a really good organisation that was able to help with a lot of information. But I think the key thing for us was connecting with other families And now we've got a really good friendship network with other parents with DMD that are Levi's age. And so the big thing for us was, I want Levi to grow up with friends that he's going to be able to speak to who just get it. And so he's got a really good friendship group that play power chair together or go to the MD New South Wales camp. And he knows them and he speaks to them. He plays Fortnite with them now. And he's had that friendship now for a few years. And it's really good to see them interact. And it's not a great condition, but they're going to grow up together. And eventually they're going to be speaking together in regards to their challenges. And that was really important for me. And then also for me personally was after speaking to my family, speaking to my friends who were all really well-meaning, it was difficult because they didn't understand. And they wanted to, but they just couldn't understand what it was actually like to go through this journey. And so that's where I started to really connect with other dads. And the difference of speaking to a dad who just gets it is amazing. And I think that's where it came from, Caroline, in regards to just having these ad hoc dad meetups. It was mainly for me. I wanted to meet more dads. I wanted to meet more people that I could be friends with. I'm probably really outgoing anyway. And I just saw the power in that we could go out, have dinner, throw axes, ride go-karts, and have a chat.
Very in a safe environment, Chris. In a safe
totally safe. And so we didn't throw the axe at anyone particular. But it's really good creating those friendships. And then a lot of the dads, and if you are looking for a really good way to connect, definitely MD New South Wales and also Power Chair New South Wales. For me, that's a really good sport for Levi to be a part of. He's got some really good teammates, Jackson being one of them, who I saw that was on the call as well. And so that's been a really good avenue for him. And also for our family, it's a really good way to meet everyone and to see everyone weekly, and to continue with that friendship. And I think those things have been absolutely pivotal for us. And for me, just understanding, I think my passion in all this, besides, in addition to Levi and my family, is helping dads get through this. Like, it's tough. And you've probably experienced it with your partner or your father, and you've seen it. And what I've noticed, it's really difficult for fathers to get through this. And for me, it's a big thing. And that's why I love this DMD, well, not just a DMD dads group, it's an MD dads group in New South Wales, where we meet probably twice a year. And it's all about just having that support, speaking to other dads who get it, so that if you've got a question, you can either pick up the phone or message someone, and they're going to be there. Whenever I call any of the dads, or whenever I message on Messenger, there's always an answer straight away. And I think that's really big, because it's a big condition, and I don't think we should hold it lightly. I think it should be given have the attention that it needs, especially for fathers. And I'm not discrediting anyone else in the community, but that's just like where I come from, seeing how big of a thing it was for me. And I encourage you, if you're a father, or if you know someone who's going through that, encourage them to get that support. By all means, contact me on Facebook or speak to Caroline, get my number.
Yeah, I can certainly refer people your way, Chris, for sure. Yeah. Totally resonate with what you're saying. And I think it's for anyone. You know, I know when I go to the meetings and come away, like my Smarties group, I come away and I go, I've just spent time with people who absolutely understand me. They understand where I'm coming from without me having to explain, without, you know, all the justification, the reasoning, and, you know, all the stuff that you do when you're explaining what's going on. People just get it. And I love that. I think peer support is one of the most valuable and probably underrated tools that we all have access to. So, you know, I really hear what you're saying. And I thank you for all the work you're doing in the dad space, because I think dads is something that, you know, we haven't done a lot of work with in the past, that mums are almost automatically connected, and the people that are, you know, having other supports. But I think the dad space, I think that's brilliant that you're working in that space. So thank you for that. Joe, I'm going to come back to you and hear if there was anything you wanted to add in terms of what was sort of some of the supports that have helped you overcome some of the biggest challenges. And I know you've mentioned your team. That's great. And your family. Was there any other things you wanted to share?
Yeah, very quickly. I first wanted to say to Chris and Bridget, hearing those stories and remembering the stuff that my parents did, it's just incredible. And it's just, I will say without a shadow of a doubt, the support that you're giving right now will be of incredible benefit. Those kids are going to grow up and they're going to know that. And I know as a father, I didn't really appreciate the challenges of parenthood. But when my kids, I've seen them grow up, having spinal muscular atrophy, they're all genetic carriers. So they're like my parents. They've got one SMA gene and one not. So they know that. And I remember thinking, what's going to happen? Are they going to grow up? Are they going to have the same condition? I'm looking for these little things. But they're obviously fine. But it is one of those things about parenting where you just appreciate those challenges. For me, I have to say, getting weaker and struggling over the years, that's been the biggest challenge for me. And every time something happens, I think, how do I manage this? I had to go to a point where I needed to get people to help feed me in public, which was a really big no-no for me. I would rather sit there feeding myself and making a mess because I was being independent. And I'm talking about as a 40-year-old, so not just some stupid, naive teenager. I was older enough and I should have known more. As my wife kept saying to me, "You've never accepted your disability." I said, "I do." But I was being very stubborn. But it made me realize I just needed to know there are some things I can't do. So I need to move along and say, okay, well, what can I do? And where can I move forward with that? And so I looked at that. And one of the biggest things for me over the last 5 or 6 years is the Smarties group that Carolyn and a lot of other people are involved in. And that to me was just brilliant. It was a really safe space. It was really great to see other people have similar sort of issues by sharing ideas on travel and holidays or services or products, what was available, what were they using. It was through Smarties that I changed my neurologist, which changed I don't want to say it's changed my life, but it certainly put me in another direction. I became more accountable. I was challenged more. I think I got complacent over time. I got my house, I got my family, I got my job. I'm comfortable, but the truth is I had to keep on moving. And so that was a really big thing for me. And then one of those things that I realized was important is the more my body weakens, the stronger my brain and my mind have to be. It has to be stronger because I need to be able to use that. And I look at Stephen Hawking as an example, and I think, well, you look at his body, he wasn't able to communicate. He used a technology, but he obviously added something and added value. He obviously was important, and he was able to get past those physical limitations. So I've been very focused on my own personal development in terms of my reading, in terms of literature, in terms of my own personal spirituality, looking at meditation, looking at other things. And I'm really driven by it. And it's very hard for me to effectively communicate just how powerful this is. And so someone who, when I was younger, I was really motivated and driven, and I kind of got complacent. And now I'm in a position where I want to be able to move that. I'm 51, but I feel like I'm 31 again. And it's an incredible stage of life for me. And if people say, oh, when was the best time of life for you? I could argue, well, when I was in my late 20s, I was so fortunate I could hold all my kids as babies on my lap. It was perfect time for me. I can't do it now, but I could do it then. And I think time was right at the time, and I had exactly what I needed. Now we've got technology, we've got AI, we've got all these other things. We've got social media. We've got this group, this NIRD Day, where it's communicating, we're sharing all these experiences, and it just feels like the world is incredibly much more open for us to make much more changes and to really get out there. And I feel like there's so much opportunity, and I think this is a really good way of doing it. I'm very passionate about it. I'm trying to find, I have to work full time, otherwise I'm not going to pay my bills. But if I could find a way to get around that and then focus on some things like this would be a really great thing for me as well, as part of my mission statement in my life, to try and be able to add value. So yes, this is why Yeah, so I'm going to stop
Oh,
there.
Joe,
Thank you.
I love that your midlife crisis is all about personal development and growth and you know, the power of connecting with community. You know, I love that because, you know, let's face it, some people's it's just about, you know, getting a Ferrari or something. But, you know, I think, yeah, I can hear what you're saying. And I'm reflecting on that for you. You and I were born in the same year, and, you know, we're sort of living that sort of middle of our life period, and it's wonderful to know that there is so much technology, treatment and connection that, you know, more than there's probably ever been. So, you know, there's so much hope, I think, which is really, really important for all the young families to know about. So thank you for sharing all your wisdom. Yeah, we want to do more, but we're running quickly out of time. So I might share just one more question with the panel, and then we'll open up to questions a bit more. So tips for others. Have you got any like extra tips that you wanted to share so that people can get the support that they need? What's, you know, one or two top tips that people would like to share?
I'm happy to jump in. For me, be well prepared for any meeting. Don't take any meetings unless you're prepared. You can say, I'm not ready. I think I've heard this in discussion with some other mums before. Just make sure you're prepared. One of the things, trust your instincts. I think, as others have said, you know your person better, you know your family better. If it doesn't feel right, ask more, ask why. Don't be a stoic. Some of us are, you know, British roots, bit stoic, and we're not always great at asking for help. A lot of people would love to help. It really helps if you can be a bit more specific with friends who say, hey, I'd like to help. If you can be a bit specific, say, look, it'd be great if you could just look after the dog here or pick so-and-so up there. I heard there was a help app just recently where you can put out things that you actually need doing it to a closed circle, trusted circle, and then they can kind of coordinate and say, hey, look, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do that. It makes it so much easier for people rather than guesswork. And my other one is, you've got finite energy. Triage it. Yeah, spend it carefully. If you don't love meal prep, get help with that. If you don't love cleaning, get help with that. This is all gives you energy back to get the supports you need and to spend that really valuable time with, you know, your person, your people. Yeah.
Such good tips.
Last thing, support's an ecosystem. It's not one way. Everybody loves a bit of kindness and empathy, and everybody on this call has got knowledge and experience. Share it out as well. Yeah.
Absolutely, Bridget. Such great tips. I love them. And I know myself, I have to have at least 1 to 2 self-care days a week. And that involves not thinking or talking or writing about NDIS or recruitment for my carers, because that is taking a huge amount of energy for many of us at this point period. So, you know, protecting your own mental health and well-being, I think, is what you're kind of alluding to there, Bridget. And I think that we all need to do that. We all need to schedule in time to relax and recoup and recharge. Is there any more R words? Recover. And
and for carers, do something fun for yourself. Don't lose yourself in it. I'm a bit annoyed that I can't do the urban axe throwing as well. They keep offering, you know, slow stretch yoga, which just not going to do it for me.
Women can throw axes too, Bridget.
They certainly can. Yes. No. I ride a
for mum's retreat, perhaps.
I'm happy. I ride a red Vespa down to pick up Jamie's medication at the hospital. That's my thing.
I'm happy to look into the axe throwing for you, Bridget.
Oh, good. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
We'll just do a really good risk
I'll do it with
really
you.
good risk assessment on that. And Chris, was there anything else you wanted to add as a tip before we take any other questions?
I think I mentioned connecting with other families is big, and also leaning on experts where you're not an expert. And I think, Caroline, I need to call you out and really thank you because you went to Levi School to speak to the teachers and the staff in regards to inclusion, and you've spoken the way that you spoke and the way that you articulated that to the teachers. They absolutely loved it, and it was something that I'm really good at articulating Levi's needs. However, you're better.
Yeah.
And I think you just need to understand that there are people within our community that will be able to just deliver that message better, whether it's your OT, and my OT's gone to the school as well, whether it's someone from MD New South Wales or a medical professional. Oftentimes we think that and we should be the best advocates and we should know the most about our child's condition. I believe that's our mandate. However, we can just lean on others like yourself, Caroline, like other organizations to really bring that extra support. And for me, that's been invaluable to have that, because it also creates a really good trust. And I found that with the school, that it's not just me. I get tired of my own voice. So I probably talk to the school 2 to 3 times a week. They know who I am as soon as I say hello. So to get,
but you're right. I think introducing that third party sometimes can be add a bit of legitimacy to the issues as well as just the parent again, but thank you for that feedback, Chris. We will be doing more of that in 2026. We will be able to offer those kinds of training sessions to schools, but also to other therapists, teams, and other areas. So thank you so much for that. We might just quickly go to any questions or anyone in the chat. There's been some lovely sharing and suggestions in the chat I can see, but Maddie, was there any particular questions? I think Rachel, you said a question. Did you want to quickly share that one? The jobifying one?
Yeah. Hi, thanks, Carolyn. It's Rachel from Muscular Dystrophy Foundation Australia. A question, or just if you're happy to comment, Bridget, on how did I put it? Well, you put it as by jobifying your role as a carer. Do you find that helps your relationship with your son, in that mother and son relationship, that you can keep that almost secret but valued?
Yes. Look, I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of work that you do and the complexity of it as a carer. So when I did kind of look at it as a whole separate project to manage, it allows me to articulate better what I do as a carer. It does allow me to wear a hat, which is a professional support for my son, as opposed to mum. I have my own space, and I set my own study, and I set aside time each week, as Carolyn, I think, was suggesting, to do the support related work. And I do that so that I only have my head in it for a certain amount of time, and then I'm completely focused on it, and then I can leave it, shut the door, and go and be mum again. Of course, it does. That's all great in theory. It doesn't exactly work like that. There are calls all over the place, but by being more organized and thinking, look, I'm going to take great pride in doing this properly and professionally, and I'm going to I've jobified it. And also, to what Chris was saying, I think a lot of people don't understand what's involved. A lot of the work is invisible. And to friends and former colleagues, I can say it is like running a small business. I've got all of these different departments that need to talk. I've got short-term, long-term, medium planning. I've got I'm consulting with my client, Jamie, etc. So it made it easier to say it's like running a small company. Yeah.
Thank you, Bridget. That's wonderful. And thank you, Rachel, for the great question. There are some other points and notes and links in the chat. We will make sure we pull them all together so that everyone gets copies of slides, but also the common themes and questions and points and tips that have come out of today, because I think they're really valuable. Jack, I might not have time for your summary right now, but if you certainly keep that, and we will share that in the notes to everybody. But I think at this point in time, we do need to have a break, and we need to thank all of our wonderful panel members, Bridget, Chris, and Joe. Can everybody give them a little online round of applause, or feel free to
Thank
clap if you can. Thank you for your wonderful, really inspiring notes and stories and sharing your wisdom. It's been fantastic. Thanks, guys. So we're going to break for 5 minutes. So we're back at 2:37. Is that right, Jack? My maths is terrible.
Yep, 2:37.
So we're running a few minutes late, but we do have a little buffer. So yeah, if everyone wants to have a little shake, have a drink, and yeah, have a little minute. And I think as we wait, we've got some slides coming up. So if people are keen to check them out, that'd be great. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had a nice, short little break. And now we've got a topic that I hold really close to my heart, and that is keeping strength versus managing fatigue, as it has been something I've been hearing since I was diagnosed with Becker's muscular dystrophy when I was 12. It is something I continue to think about daily as to the importance of the topic, so I'm quite excited for this one as well. And with great privilege, I would like to welcome Dr. Veena Rekar and Tess South-Coombe from Concord Hospital. As a little intro, and I'm sure you guys can introduce yourself more if you'd feel like. Dr. Veena is a senior staff specialist in rehabilitation medicine and head of the Department of Rehabilitation Medicine at Concord Hospital. She leads the multidisciplinary disability assessment and rehabilitation team for young people with multiple disability service at Concord Hospital, providing comprehensive and collaborative care for young people. And Tess is an occupational therapist who works in the disability assessment and rehabilitation team for young people with multiple disabilities at Concord Hospital. She's worked as an occupational therapist in disability for over 15 years in both community and outpatient settings. Her current role provides consultation and support to people with intellectual disability and those with complex neuromuscular conditions. And over to you both.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. And thank you very much for the opportunity to talk this afternoon. The topic I'm presenting today is keeping muscle strength versus managing fatigue in muscular dystrophy. The purpose, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. Okay. The purpose of today's presentation is to cover or to understand more and to clarify whether exercise is safe in muscular dystrophy, to explain the latest scientific evidence for exercise in muscular dystrophy, to provide safe and practical guidelines for physical activity, learn how to balance exercise with managing fatigue. The goal is to help you feel more confident in knowing what is helpful, what is safe, and how to listen to your body. Next slide. Thank you. All right. So before we dwell into topic of exercise and fatigue, it's a good idea to understand what we mean by muscular dystrophy. It's a group of inherited muscle diseases, not one condition, but multiple, that cause progressive muscle weakness. There are different types. As we have already listened to, the Duchenne, Becker's, limb-girdle, facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy, and many more. More importantly, with muscular dystrophy, each individual is affected differently. There's very significant heterogeneity here. When we say each individual is affected differently, for some, it can be involvement of more of lower limbs. For some, it is upper limbs. And for some, it is breathing, speech, and swallow. And there's asymmetrical involvement. Sometimes it's one side of the body is affected more than the other side of the body. Why I'm saying all of this is that when we are planning exercise, prescribing exercise, we need to be very careful in terms of what muscles are affected, what is the functioning, and what would be the goal of exercises. And that's really very important. So hence, we need to look at a person holistically in terms of what's the function, what are the goals, what muscles are affected. And importantly, what I would say that there are very useful, healthy, compensatory strategies a person would be using. And we need to recognize that and not undo those compensatory strategies, what are there. So understanding that is really very important in prescribing exercise. So very clearly, there's a very clear need for individualized exercise program in muscular dystrophy. That is to meet with the functional needs, physical needs, and the level of fatigue and pain and other things a person has. Consider all of that in terms of preparing exercise plan for a person. Next slide. And it's completely normal to have concerns about exercise when living with muscular dystrophy. These are some of the most common questions people ask. Will exercise speed up muscle damage? Is rest better than activity? Is it safe to exercise? My muscles are already weak. Won't exercise damage them further? I'm already exhausted. How can I manage exercise? Today, we'll talk about what science says, as well as how to approach exercise in a way that is safe, comfortable, still will be able to achieve goals, what we want to achieve by exercising. Next slide, thank you. So next one is what we know now. So our understanding of exercise in muscular dystrophy has come a long way. In the past, the advice was often to avoid physical activity, but that has changed. In the last 10 to 15 years, there's growing body of scientific evidence that has reshaped our understanding in terms of role of exercise in muscular dystrophy. One important key message I want you all to listen today is it is carefully tailored, very individualized, supervised, mild to moderate intensity exercise is very safe. It is functionally beneficial. It has got multiple other benefits that it can maintain mobility, it can improve cardiovascular health, bone health, help in management of pain, and it can improve quality of life. But the key here, very important one, it should be individualized to the person. As Bridget was saying, look at a person holistically, look at everything in terms of functioning, the impairments, physical ability, and all of that need to be considered in tailoring the exercise program. So when we do that, clearly exercise is not a cure, but it can be a very valuable tool to help maintain function, maintain independence, and to improve quality of life. Next slide. Thanks, Maddie. So there are many supporting evidence now, although research itself can be very difficult because, as I said, each person with muscular dystrophy is very unique. No two people are affected exactly the same way. So managing research, especially in terms of looking at role of exercise, can be difficult. But there is more and more evidence that tailored supervised aerobic and resistance training in mild to moderate intensity can be very helpful in endurance training or improving endurance, improving mobility, building up confidence. And when it is tailored and supervised, it can actually give no harm. So it is going to be safe. So now guidelines now recommend exercise as part of comprehensive care for patients with muscular dystrophy. American Academy of Neurology, European Neuromuscular Center recommends supervised low to moderate intensity tailored aerobic and resistance exercises can be beneficial. So, which is really important here. The message is when done safely, the exercise can be part of good care for patients with muscular dystrophy. Next slide, thank you. So there are various benefits. There are, when done carefully, safely, benefits of tailored exercises are many. It can help in maintaining functional ability, maintain muscle strength, support cardiovascular and respiratory well-being. It can improve mood. It can boost mental health, promote independence. It can improve or reduce pain. It can reduce stiffness as well. So importantly here, it needs to be done safely, appropriately. Then the benefits are beyond just building muscle strength. Next slide, thank you. So a well-tailored exercise program can also delay functional decline. It can help in maintaining walking ability for longer, help building better balance, improve in managing activities of daily living. It can actually reduce dependence and promote independence. But here, the important one is it should be in a way that very, very, very much towards individualized exercise program. Next slide. Now, we've spoken about exercise and it can be useful, but what type of exercise? There are aerobic exercise, which involves walking, cycling, swimming. What does aerobic exercise mean? It means that use of large muscles in a rhythmic, continuous pattern over a sustained period of time. Here, it uses oxygen for producing energy. So it is extraordinarily beneficial for heart and lung health. So the aerobic exercises involve walking, cycling, and swimming. In terms of resistance exercises, is basically the other name for resistance exercise is strength training. It involves your muscles working against a force or resistance. So that can be use of light weights, resistance band, but I'll go through resistance training a bit more in my other slides. The next one is flexibility exercises, which are really very important in maintaining range of movements, the joint range of movement, and reducing stiffness or contractures. And breathing exercises such as deep breathing exercises are really very important for your lungs. And when we have better working lungs, the exercise endurance can be absolutely fantastic. So it's important that we need to look at all these type of exercises, but not all of that actually fit for everybody. Again, we need to choose what type of exercise is beneficial for us and then consider those ones under supervision and monitored by a skilled physiotherapist or exercise physiologist. Next slide. So we now know what type, and now we need to know in what frequency and what intensity. If we're doing the aerobic exercises, we can do 2 to 3 sessions, and very short sessions, like can be 20 to 30 minutes. But over a period of time, you can actually increase those sessions if your body can tolerate, and if your fatigue levels are within manageable level, you can manage it for more number of days. Resistance training, ideally twice weekly, with 1 to 2 sets of 10 to 12 reps. But then again, that if you are able to manage it, you can progress it under monitoring and supervision. So intensity, how hard it should be, I would say somewhat hard. But start with gentle and then go up if your body can tolerate. But in terms of intensity, I've got a scale to describe today so that you can use that to understand how your body copes with intensity of exercise. Yeah, so in terms of what are safe strength training tips, first is always start low in terms of when you're doing resistance training, and start with low weight but high repetition. You can always use your body weight for strength training. You don't need to actually have equipment and go to gym. You can do it at home, such as planks, sit-ups. All of those exercises can be a fantastic strength training exercises. You can use body weight, as I said, light bands, the TheraBand of various resistance, and you can use water for resistance as well for strength training. So you can include stretching, range of motion exercises, as I said, and always it's a good idea to have a therapist monitoring you, and so that they know that they can teach you how to monitor the signs of fatigue. And also they can actually look at how to fine-tune exercise as you start tolerating a level of exercise where you can actually tolerate further increment in your efforts. Next slide. So, using the Borg scale to stay in the safe zone. So what is the Borg scale? It is basically a subjective way to measure how hard you're exercising and how your body feels when you're exercising. The score is between 6 to 20. 6 is no exertion at all. Just while you're lying in bed, you're just not exerting. 20 is very, very hard. You're out of breath, you're unable to, you're in pain, you're fatigued, you're tired. That is 20. So in terms of this allows you, when you're exercising, you can actually look at, even before exercising, how am I feeling? Am I feeling okay, rested, relaxed, ready to exercise? And when you're doing exercise, you can actually look at how hard it is. Am I able to talk comfortably? Am I out of breath? Am I able to continue? Do I feel I've got enough energy to continue with exercising? And all of that, it helps you to understand in terms of how you're progressing with exercise. The numbers, how it has come is that the number actually, they're designed to roughly to match with your heart rate, your breathing rate, your sense of effect or effort. All of that is considered in putting the numbers in terms of Vogue score. Next slide. So as I said, 6, 7, 8, 6 and 7 are very, very light, lying in bed. 9 can be going to the toilet and coming back, but can be effortful for some, depending on the muscle function, pain, and all other things. Then 11 is fairly light, where you're able to talk in sentences. 13 coming there is you're feeling you're a bit breathless, but you're feeling it is somewhat hard. So what we would actually recommend in exercising in muscular dystrophy is just keep it between 9 to 13. So 14 and above, it is very hard, and it can make your fatigue levels very, very bad, because during exercise, temporary fatigue is fine, but what we do not want is prolonged fatigue. That's the important thing you need to remember. So it's a subjective score. You can actually look at what you can and can't do and how bad you feel, and depending on that, you can look at exercising to the intensity of what your body can cope with. Next slide. Thank you. So this is what I said, 9 comfortable, but breathing is mildly harder, but minimal. By 11, it's minimal sweating, but talk easily. So, and 13, slight breathlessness, but you can still talk. And that would be what I would be aiming towards when we are exercising in muscular dystrophy. Next slide. Yep, so 9 to 10 light, so aim for 13, but start with 6 and then go up as your body can tolerate. Next one. So what to avoid? This is really very important. So do not go for high resistance strength training. Next one is eccentric overload, but I'll cover in my next slide what eccentric exercise is. Excessive fatigue, pain post-exercise, that is no. So basically, what I would clearly say, don't push through excessive fatigue. Don't push through excessive pain. That is not required. Fatigue should be temporary, not prolonged, important. And importantly, no pain, no gain mindset is not applicable in muscular dystrophy. Exercise should be, if you need to feel comfortable, enjoyable, not too challenging. Next slide, thanks. So what is eccentric exercise? I basically said, try to avoid eccentric exercise. So it's a type of movement where muscle lengthens while under tension. That is basically when you're lowering weight during a biceps curl or walking downhill, or lowering heavy object to the floor, or descending stairs. All of this, the muscles are working eccentrically. So this actually puts extra strain on the muscles, which are already weak in muscular dystrophy. Next slide. So that's the reason when we are actually putting strain on a muscle which is actually in a stretched form, it can create a higher mechanical strain. So because the muscle membranes are already fragile, they are more prone to damage and inflammation. So hence, eccentric loading has shown to be risky in patients with muscular dystrophy. So I would actually say that avoid eccentric exercises because it can actually increase fatigue, and you may feel weaker for longer. Instead, add concentric exercises where muscles shorten while working. So you can start lifting lighter objects, but in a concentric way, in a controlled way. And then that is actually less fatiguing, as well as there's no pain, but you're still actually developing the strength which you want to actually do with resistance exercises. Next slide. So, as I said, choose low impact, energy efficient exercises. If you're able to, if you are not allergic to chlorine, or if you're not, you're the person who can get into the water, pool-based exercises can be really very good. It reduces strain on the joints and muscles. Water supports body weight, and it can actually help in managing your exercises better. Seated exercises are good as well. So here you can actually do in seated leg lifts, arm circles, and they're very good in terms of improving your cardiovascular health. Gentle stretching, because in many muscular dystrophy conditions, the muscle contractures are common. So gentle stretching helps in prevention of contractures and improves flexibility as well. Cycling can be considered, but again, when you want to initiate cycling for your exercise program, it's a good idea that it should be prescribed by a therapist and supervised to see how you tolerate it. Next, please. Thank you. So next one is about how to pace. Use the pacing strategy. Basically, when you're exercising, always make sure that you're exercising for a short period of time and there is a rest period as well. So if you exercise for 10 minutes, a few minutes of rest is a good idea. So, and also spread exercises throughout the day instead of all at once, so that you are not exercising to the point of exhaustion. You can also use a timer to prompt breaks. So you need to listen to your body when you're exercising and adjust depending on how you feel. If you're feeling very tired, reduce the intensity, or you can even stop exercising, because what you should be able to do, you should be able to do your other activities of daily living even after exercising. That is really very important. So you need to still have that energy. You're not used up all what you have for exercises, but unable to do other chores, what you need to be doing for the day. Next one. So next slide, thank you. So each one of us, we do have different energy peaks. Some people are morning people, some are afternoon, some are evening. So you need to look at when you have those energy peaks, so you can plan your exercises during your energy peaks. So if you're very tired, that's when you're unable to cope with having exercises then. So you need to remember, have a log or a diary to see how your body actually feels, and you can actually incorporate exercise during your high energy peaks. And mostly for many, it is going to be around midday. It also depends on your sleep-wake cycle and your sleep hygiene as well. Many of my patients with muscular dystrophy, they would say that they get up around 11 a.m. because they wouldn't have had a good sleep. So it all depends on what has happened for the day for you. Have you had a good sleep? Were you in pain? Or considering all of that, you can actually mind changing your intensity level, type of exercises. On days when you don't have enough energy, you can actually do very relaxing, stretching exercises. Doing something is better than doing nothing. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right. And here, the important one, keep sessions short. 10 to 20 minutes is good session, and keep it for 3 to 5 days. But if you're able to, if with a lower intensity exercises, you can have it for 6 days, as long as your body can cope with it. Focus on consistency, not intensity. This is a very important one. Consistent, regular activity maintains muscle function. Small, consistent actions add up over time to big results. This is really very important, that consistency. You don't need to actually do high intensity for one day and have muscle aches and pains for 7 days and unable to cope with exercise program. Consistent, a shorter duration, allowing rest breaks is a way to go. So doing little often beats doing too much as well. So you're exercising for your long-term health, not short-term performance. Go to the next slide. Important, this is very, very important. Rest days are part of the plan. So rest is required. Rest is required for muscles. It gives time to recover and repair. It also prevents overuse, injuries, and fatigue, prevents burnout. So rest is really very important. And remember, rest is recovery, not a setback. So it's okay to have rest days after having tiring exercise days. And you can plan rest days depending on your other medical issues as well. So the days when you are really tired, when you're unable to do, can be taken as a rest day for recovering so that you can actually go on to exercising following day when you're ready. Next slide. So important here, one of the other thing is supporting your breathing. It's important if you're able to actually add breathing exercises as well, especially if your breathing is affected with the muscular dystrophy condition. Your therapist can teach you diaphragmatic breathing, and there's something called inspiratory and expiratory muscle strength training program. Your speech therapist can teach you. It's a type of resistance training with basically using different devices to actually help strengthen your breathing exercises, because it's important. If your breathing is good, then your oxygenation capacity is better. Your ability to tolerate exercises is going to be better. So you can breathe well during exercises and you feel stronger and comfortable and don't experience breathlessness during exercises. Next slide. Thank you. All right. As I said, rest is part of the plan. Here is hydration and nutrition is also part of the plan for exercise. So drink water before and after exercise. Make sure you keep yourself hydrated. Eat light, healthy snack before exercise. Avoid sugary energy drinks or caffeine before activity. And good balanced diet helps, and protein-rich diet, if you're able to tolerate that, helps in terms of recovery as well, and muscle recovery too. So it's a good idea to have a healthy, nutritious, balanced diet and keeping yourself hydrated before and after exercise. Next slide. Thank you. So the important other one is for exercise. When you're exercising, you need to actually have a cool down period. I'll tell you what exactly cool down period is. So if you're walking as a part of your aerobic exercise program, just before stopping or finishing off your walking plan, reduce your speed for a couple of minutes before stopping. This will allow your heart rate to come back to your resting heart rate, your breathing to come back to resting, so that it allows you to cool down your muscles and your body such that you don't need to experience dizziness for suddenly stopping it. It also helps in terms of reduces the possibilities of you suffering from fatigue and tiredness and muscle pain. So it can actually be a couple of minutes of reduced intensity, reduced speed walking just before you stop the exercise program. So every exercise program should have warm-up period, which I'll be going through in my next slide, and a cool down period, and 20 minutes of exercise period. We'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is also very important. Please monitor for signs of overtraining. So if you experience prolonged muscle soreness, you can have temporary muscle soreness, muscle fatigue, but if it is lasting for more than 24 hours, you're overdone it. So if you're experiencing significant fatigue following day, that you've overdone it as well. Dark urine, cramping, stop exercising. Don't do. You need to seek advice and support from your healthcare teams if there's dark urine. Breathing issues during activity, you're overdoing, then stop or reduce intensity. If there's joint swelling, instability, or severe prolonged fatigue, persistent pain, all of these signs are basically your overtraining. Listen to your body. That's really very important. So, or speak to your physiotherapist, exercise physiologist, or your doctor. If any of these are happening, that means you're overtraining. The other one is something called delayed onset muscle soreness. That's DOMS. That is, again, if you're actually doing intense exercises, unaccustomed exercises for a longer period of time, that's when you have muscle pain, which comes a day after exercising but lasts longer. That is a sign that you're overdone it. Again, that's a time you need to look at reducing intensity, frequency of your exercises, or adding rest days. Go to the next slide. Thank you. So again, every exercise program need to be very individualized, supervised by your physiotherapist or exercise physiologist. It is need to be very much to your abilities, your functional level. And one important thing for exercises, one size fits all is not a right approach in patients with muscular dystrophy. That's why it's important. It needs to be tailored to your needs, your goals. Next slide. Okay, as I said, warming up. We did cover cooling down, warming up as well. Just before you start your exercise program, it's a good idea to have some stretches, some shoulder rolls, and slow walking before you get into your pace. This allows your heart, your breath to get adjusted to exercise so that when you're exercising, you feel comfortable in terms of your breathing, your heart can cope. So always remember, there need to be warming up period and cool down period, and avoid eccentric exercises as I discussed earlier on. And remember, so depending on the lower limb muscle function, in terms of your balance, in terms of pain, presence and absence of foot drop, you may need a walking aid to help, such as use a stick, frame, or a crutch, depending on the level of weakness, what you need, and that can be prescribed by your doctors or therapist. It is really very important. Not only it improves base of support, it improves balance, it can make your walking more economical and safe and prevent falls as well. So there's always, you need to look at if walking is becoming very fatiguing, tiring, and unsafe, there's always room to look at whether a walking aid is going to be useful so that we can maintain walking for longer and prevent injurious falls as well. And as I said, hydration is really very important, and that is the important thing, what you need to make sure that you are keeping yourself hydrated during exercises. Next slide. And remaining motivated. I think one important thing is setting small achievable goals. I've had one patient, we started with 500 steps per day. Now she does 10,000 steps per day. But start slow, go slow as well. Listen to your body, what you're able to do, and then gradually increase it. If any goal achieved is a success and celebrated. As I said earlier, consistency is more important than intensity. And when you're starting exercise, you can actually maintain a log or diary or something to see how you're progressing with exercise, and have your family members do exercise with you. You can actually share each other's successes and motivate each other. And the other way you can motivate yourself is listening to music while you're exercising, watching TV while you're exercising. All of that can actually help you as well. And you can enjoy what you're doing. And it is not a chore. It is something what you love to do, and you can enjoy it as well. So there are various ways you can actually exercise outdoors, talk to people, exercise with a friend so that you can motivate each other. So there are various ways you can actually do, or exercise with your therapist as well, who can actually motivate you further in continuing with your exercise program. Next slide, thank you. All right, lastly, this is my last slide. So exercise is not harmful when done correctly, under supervision, when it is tailored to your requirement, and when it is kept within mild to moderate intensity, and making sure exercises you're doing it within your energy level, not overly exhausting yourself. One important advice: keep moving gently, wisely, and safely. Thank you all for listening. For questions, I think if you can keep those questions with yourself for until we finish Tessa's talk on fatigue, then we can come back to questions later. Thank you all.
Thank you, Veena. I'll just set up my window. All right, hopefully you can see that slide. Please let me know if you can't. So I'm just going to hone in a little bit more on fatigue specifically and take you through some of the strategies that I tend to talk through with patients to give you just a bit of a frame of reference of how we might think about fatigue more closely. So what we're talking about when we're talking about fatigue is we can have fatigue that is short term, that is related mostly to some sort of effort that we've done. But there's also, particularly with muscular dystrophy, that chronic fatigue that comes through, that fatigue that's from the condition itself. We talk about having an increase in effort to complete a task. And some of those symptoms of that fatigue can come out with difficulty starting or finishing tasks, a lack of motivation, poor appetite, and feeling fatigued in our brain fog fatigue. So some of the things that can contribute to the secondary fatigue. So these are the sorts of things that we have a little bit more influence over. So our sleep, our hydration, nutrition, physical activity and fitness, mental health and mood, and our pain. And some of these things can impact our fatigue positively and some can impact them negatively. So first, we want to have a little bit more of an understanding about what fatigue means to you. So there are a couple of different scales that we might look at. One is the fatigue severity scale, and this looks mostly at the physical side of fatigue. How physically, how does your fatigue impact on you physically? And fatigue is really subjective. So these things are filled out by the patient and gives us a bit of a starting point to start the discussion. And sometimes we will repeat these later to be able to see if any of the changes we've made haven't had an impact. The fatigue assessment scale also brings in a little bit more of that psychological fatigue. So it gives us a bit of an indication of, yes, okay, the physical fatigue is real, but also that mental fatigue is really worth discussing as well. And the modified fatigue impact scale. So these are all quite similar, and you might choose one over the other based on what the patient is sort of telling you. What sorts of things are we really going to want to address first? What I find is one of the most useful tools, though, is keeping a diary. So having a look at what does your week look like? What time are you waking up? What activities are you doing day to day? What time are you going to bed? And what your fatigue looks like across the day. And being able to do this for a week or two quite stringently really gives some clues as to what sorts of activities do make you more tired, more fatigued, and what energize you. And sometimes that might be, actually, I'm used to having a shower in the morning and a nice hot shower, but I often feel a little bit exhausted after that task. So is there the opportunity to move some of those things around? And sometimes honing in and having a really good look at what your fatigue is across days is a good starting point to say, what can we change here? What sorts of things might we be able to influence to be able to manage our fatigue better across the week? What we'd really like to see is the fatigue like the diagram on the left. We want a nice balance. We know fatigue won't be linear. It will have its ups and downs depending on what we do. But the picture on the right is what we're trying to avoid, that pushing through, and a crash. And that recovery is often much slower to be able to get back to a level where we have enough energy again. So we want to make sure we're trying to balance our fatigue across a day, across a week, to be able to do as many of the things that we really want to do as possible. So some of the strategies we talk about when we're thinking about fatigue is the 5 Ps. Sometimes there are 4 Ps, but planning, having a strategy for what our week looks like. What are the things that we have in this week? What are the things that are the zap our energy the most? What energize us? And making sure they're spread out across the week. Prioritizing what's most important for you to do, and pacing those activities across the day so that we have that up and down balance of our fatigue, and we're not front loading our Monday really busy or our Sundays really busy and we end up with a big crash on a Monday. Positioning is talking about your body in space and what muscles we're using, what positions we're using to make sure we're being efficient about how we're using those muscles. And permission. So permission to say, no, I can't do that today. Permission to say, I'm actually going to pass that on to somebody else. Giving yourself permission to take those rest breaks when you need to. Thinking about what are the things that I must do today or tomorrow or in this week. What are the things that I should do? And what are some of the things that I, if I have enough energy at the end? So there's one way to sort of frame what you're thinking about fatigue.
Has Tess frozen, do we think? Yeah.
Looks like she has, yeah.
Tess, if you can hear us.
So thinking about what other things that I sorry, I'm going to go back. Thinking about a risk management in terms of activities. So this is just another strategy to think about some of the activities you do and how they might be modified to be able to spread that fatigue across. So I'm going to use the example of laundry, and some of these don't fit beautifully, but first thinking about, can I eliminate this task? Is this something I have to do today? Is this something I have to do this week? Or is it something that someone else might be able to do instead? Can I pay somebody else to do that? Can I use my NDIS supports to have somebody else do this task for me? We could think about breaking it into 2 parts, or can I do this task a slightly different way? Can I substitute the task? So perhaps laundry is not on my activity list for today. I don't have the energy for that. But is there another task I could do so that the laundry can wait until later in the week? Looking at engineering controls is thinking about the tools that might be able to help me to do that laundry. So could I today use the dryer instead of using the energy to put that washing out? Am I better off changing my washing machine to a front loader that's at waist height rather than the top loader that I've had? Should I use a clothes horse instead of using the heels hoist out the back? Are there other tools that I can use to make this easier on me? The administrative controls would be, can I break it into smaller loads so that I don't spend as much time and energy putting this washing out and bringing it in? Making sure you're using good ergonomics when you're lifting, carrying your load close to you. Am I using big muscles to do this task? Could I use laundry sheets instead of a big box of laundry powder? Can I use a pump pack instead of having to lift that box of powder down from the cupboard? And then PPE is probably not the best example in terms of laundry, but could I use less pegs? Can I keep those items closer together so I'm not moving as much? Can I hang certain things straight on the clothes hanger so that I'm eliminating one of those steps? So it's another way to think about the problems that, or how to spread some of those tasks, the energy you need to create that task over different ways. But I think the biggest thing is, am I ready to make a change? Is now the right time to focus on this fatigue and make small changes, or am I ready to make big changes? And as Bridget has said, you are the expert in your body. You know your body best. What do you feel about your fatigue on the day? It is very subjective, and we know that that fatigue is there. And it will have ups and downs. So listening to your body, what's most important for you right now? And when you have tried some things, having that curiosity, that reflection, did that work? Did that actually make me have more energy by the end of the day? What did I notice? Or do I need to go back and make a few different changes? So using tools and equipment to help you is really an excellent way of managing that fatigue. And Amazon and Temu have gadgets for almost anything, particularly in the kitchen and in the wardrobe. So having a look, if you're having trouble with something, Googling it might come up with a $10 option that might help you along the way. Thinking about what is most important, what are the things that I'm going to prioritize for today, listening to your body. Can we make things lighter? Can we make them more accessible? Using bigger muscles to do bigger tasks and working smarter, not harder. So I'll stop there so we have a bit of time for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tess and Dr. Rekha. I very much love the session. I did want to sort of, before we start the questions, just share 6 main sort of takeaways, or more so like how I see it sort of playing out in my life. And the first one is around that individualized program for exercise, and the whole sentiment of every single person is different. So it's important to say, be an advocate for yourself in physios. For example, when I'm working with my physios, I'll let them know, hey, I've noticed this in my body and I wanted to hear your thoughts. Do you think there's anything I could do stretch-wise or exercises that could help target that? That's something that I do all the time. And again, the never overexert yourself and the consistency being key. Dr. Rekha, that definitely really sat in my life really sort of well. It's never do too much, always do a little. And if need be, make sure you take as much rest as you need. Sometimes I'll, like, for example, be walking around a lot at university and I might feel a bit tired after that day. So instead of doing, say, an exercise with the resistance bands, I'll just avoid doing exercise that day just to be safe and not do too much. And yeah, just a theme around listening to your body. I know it's been said quite a number of times today, but from someone that has a neuromuscular condition, listening to my body and just being aware of how I'm feeling, whether that's through diaries, whether that's through meditating or breathing. That's some ways that I do that. But with that in mind, I'd love to go back to some questions. I know we had a question before around, we have a lot of good chats here. So I'm just trying to find the question that Andrew asked a while ago.
Yeah, Andrew asked about the best way to find a physio who understands muscular dystrophy, and I thought it was a great question. Yeah, Andrew, you're with us, but we've got the question there. I wrote some ideas down while I was thinking, but I'd love to hear the thoughts from Dr. Rekha and from Tess and anyone else in the group as well, because I think for me, word of mouth is key in finding good support. So that's what I would start with, is asking other people, particularly, peers that might live in your local area or, have the same condition as yourself, perhaps. But yeah, did anyone else want to have a go at that one?
Carolyn, what we do, we run multidisciplinary neuromuscular clinics at Concord Hospital. It's a fortnightly clinic. And when we see patients there, we do comprehensive examination and look at what exactly is the problem, where is the problem. Sometimes there is muscular dystrophy related muscle weakness, but there is sometimes a recent hospital admission or recent flu related deconditioning, where you can actually get the muscle function back to where it was through exercise program. But sometimes it is lower limb muscle involvement, where you can actually strengthen some muscles to get back to a tailored or normal walking or modified independent walking. So we need to look at what muscles are affected, where we need to focus in terms of stretching, where we need to focus on strengthening. Sometimes we look at adding core muscles, which is really very important. So what we do at Concord is that for some who have got access to physiotherapy, but the physiotherapists have got no skills, for them, what we do is we give one-off physiotherapy session with our skilled physiotherapist who can actually look at what needs to be done and give a handover to NDIS-funded physiotherapist. And then we do periodic review, like once in 12 months, to look at how the home-based exercise program is going on and what need to be fine-tuned in terms of exercise program.
Awesome, thank you for that answer. And we have another question here from Stuart. Would you like to ask that question? If not, I'm more than happy to read it out if you're there. I'll give you a few seconds just in case. Okay, no worries. So it looks like the question is, Stuart has an 8-year-old son with Becker muscular dystrophy. And the question is around, is indoor soccer a safe activity for him?
Yeah, so 8-year-old Becker muscular dystrophy, I think this question is difficult to answer. We need to look at what the muscle strength, which muscle groups are affected, whether there is proximal weakness, whether there's distal weakness, level of fatigue, all of that need to be addressed and assessed before we say whether it is okay for soccer. But I think that need to be comprehensively looked at, and then we can actually look at whether it is safe or unsafe.
Yeah, I agree. I think the treating team, the people, the doctors and treating team clinicians at the clinic that the child sees would be best placed to say whether that's a good activity for that child. Yeah, no, good. Thank you. Great. Tess, I also, and Dr. Vina, I wanted to say great presentations, really thoughtful and very tailored to people with muscular dystrophy. I had a question, if I could ask perhaps a question. What sorts of activities could we consider that are exercise that potentially aren't called exercise? Because I'm in the category of exercise is probably not the fun thing to do, although I do stretching routines morning and night every day. But I'm a big believer in like breath exercise, particularly for someone who's needing diaphragm support or BiPAP. We all need oxygen. So I like singing, and I know that when I'm singing, I'm using my muscles. So that's a fun way to exercise. Are there other exercises or activities that we can do that are just really good for us?
Yeah, very good question, Carolyn. So one of the things what I was talking about was for breathing exercises. Apart from deep breathing exercises, there are some yoga which actually have got breathing exercises as part of yoga sessions. And then is one important one is, given that you did say that you use BiPAP, so you can, if you have access to speech therapist, there's something called expiratory muscle strength training exercise using a device called breather, which comes with various level of resistance. So you're blowing into that, and progressively as your strength gets better, then you can go up the level of resistance and you can manage it. So this is ideally normally supervised and monitored by speech therapist, and I actually do that regularly for our patients, and it has been very, very useful and helpful. That's one part of it. The other ones are, we can actually look at light weights in terms of if you're able to cope with that, that can be considered. And basically stretching, what you said is a really good very good exercise, stretching. I would highly encourage that to be continued. But then in terms of other exercises, I would still want to know comprehensively about your muscle function. And then we can actually look at what type of exercises can be beneficial.
Thanks, Dr. Rekha. I think sometimes as a wheelchair user, you can, kind of just sometimes say that a lot of exercises aren't accessible or inclusive to wheelchair users. But I know that even just like watching TV, squeezing your hands or your toes can increase circulation, and that's helpful. Adjusting positions with reclining your wheelchair, things like that. Those are all good for you. They might not be high intensity cardio exercise, but they're certainly good for your circulatory system and your pressure relieving system. So there are other things as well as the traditional exercises, I guess.
I agree 100%. And some of our patients who have progressively become wheelchair users, we have recommended playing wheelchair soccer, and initially some of them were very reluctant, and many have come back and have been extraordinarily happy that that has happened in their lives, and they enjoy most of it in the sport aspect of it, meeting other people, and they've loved it.
Huge benefits, isn't it? Huge benefits. Yeah. I don't know if Chris is still with us, but I'm sure he would talk till the cows come home about the benefits for children playing, or not just children, but everyone playing sport, wheelchair accessible sport or other modified sport. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Was there any other questions or comments, Jack, in the chat, or Maddie?
Yeah, there's one more.
Karaoke. Oh, I like the sound of that, Rachel. That sounds very fun.
Yeah, there was one more question here from Rachel, and I'm just trying to summarize this in an easy way. Does this mean that always having a professional involved, or is it more advising and setting programs and then reviewing them on a regular basis? So I guess the question is around, does a professional have to be involved throughout the whole process, or can you advise and set programs and review them, and also, I guess, use sort of self-experimentation and awareness of your body to be aware of that?
Yeah, very good question. Very, very good question. I think initial comprehensive examination is one, and then depending on that, exercise prescription in terms of what type of exercises, what frequency, what intensity, all of that need to be part of that exercise prescription. And then we need to actually have a periodic review to look at, is this exercise working? Do we need to actually change anything here, or whether there is need for changing, adding intensity or frequency if tolerated? So all of that, even including resistance, what type of resistance training we are doing, would be ideally done by a skilled therapist. It would be a good idea. It is not that every exercise program need to be monitored by a skilled therapist. It is initial prescription, as long as we know that that you're able to carry on without supervision, provided it is rightly done, programmed for you, it is fine. But for some, I think some of my patients, they really benefit by regular physiotherapy, someone monitoring it regularly. It is again varies from person to person. Some can manage unsupervised after initial prescription. They can do it really very well. Some may need ongoing supervision such that we are able to manage the exercises within safe zone.
Yeah, I just wrote a note in the chat there about exercise physiology also playing a role, and training up support workers to support people with their daily exercise routines can be also an option. So I know that's a little more cost effective for the NDIS, for example. There's one more question. Andrew, is it Andrew? It's not, is it Andrew? Hello, Andrew, or is it someone else there on Andrew James's line? Would you like to ask your question? Unmute yourself. Just unmute.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I listened to what you had to say. It was very interesting. When you're doing your exercise and things, surely it must be really important that as you're growing as an adolescent, before you get to an adult, to obviously do the maximum amount of exercises you're doing, mainly to get your body strength up as best as it can. What I think happens is that once you get to a peak in your 20s or so, with the gradual progression of the Becker muscle dystrophy, which I've got, what happens is that means that you can extend your lifetime much more. I think there's a big difference in regards to what we're doing when, as you age, you know, obviously it gets worse, but the longer you can extend that, the more useful you can be in, you know, obviously doing what you need to do. I'm 68 years old with Becker muscular dystrophy and still have a reasonable amount of movement. I put down most of my movement when I was an adolescent by doing a lot of walking, a lot of exercise in regards just basically doing things until I was an adolescent. And that strength has served me for a long length of time. Is that sort of thing is what should be recommended to people?
Thanks, Andrew. A very, very good question. I agree. It all, as I said very earlier on, exercise prescription should be considering everything: age, ability, muscle function, fatigue level, endurance, all of that. And also we need to look at, one is overall fitness, but other goals need to be set as well. What do we want to achieve? Do we want to actually have safe transfers? Do we want to, that can be a goal, we can work on transfer technique. Do we want to achieve maintaining walking, safe walking for longer period of time? First is independent walking, then we can set a goal as using a walker or using a mobility aid. So it can be very individualized to what we want to achieve, what patients' goals are, and what are the functional tasks that we want to establish or achieve through exercise. And I agree, it all need to be looking at. One very important thing you said is making person as independent as possible for as long as possible through exercises.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that question, Andrew, and thank you for that lovely response, Dr. Rekha. Would everyone thank Dr. Rekha and Tess for their excellent presentations this afternoon? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And we'd love to get a copy of those if we could to hand out to people after the chat. That'd be great. Thank you so much. Good. Well, let's move on. We're only a few minutes late, but we must keep going. We're almost there. We've got 2 more sessions to go. This is the sciencey, nerdy session that Jack was talking about earlier. And I'd like to introduce our friends, Dr. Dennis Yeo and Dr. AC Karma. They're here today to talk to us about the latest in research and treatment for different muscular dystrophies. They've got a huge long list of bios in their bio, which I won't read in the sake of saving time, but Dr. Dennis, would you like to go first at all? We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for returning. You were with us a couple of years, was it last year or a couple of years ago?
Yeah, a couple of years. Yeah.
And you've come back, which is nice to know. So thank you.
Just want to double check you can see my slides.
We sure can.
Lovely. So I'll be talking about mostly current and upcoming clinical trials in FSHD and myotonic dystrophy. It is quite a technical presentation and with a lot of scientific detail. The goal is not to focus on the details, but just really to provide an overview of the different approaches that different groups and different pharmaceutical companies are taking to trying to tackle this problem of developing treatments that work in FSHD and myotonic dystrophy. But if you have any questions, type them into the chat and I can answer them. So I think Dr. Epi had mentioned this kind of pipeline a bit earlier in the day of how new treatments, and particularly drugs, new medications are developed. They start on the left-hand side in a preclinical phase where scientists study them in a laboratory, usually in a cell model or an animal model. And if it's safe and if it seems to be effective, it then transitions to human studies. And that's where we get to these phase 1, 2, 3, 4 studies. So phase 1 is really the first time a new drug or new treatment is being tried in humans. And often, not always, but often it is first tried in healthy volunteers and usually quite a small group, maybe a dozen patients or so. If it's safe and they find a dose that seems to not cause too many side effects, it might then progress to phase 2, where they might try it in a larger group, usually of patients with the particular condition, for example, muscular dystrophy in this setting. And again, we're looking is it safe? Is it tolerable? But now that it's being treated or trialed in the condition, we can start to see, does it seem to have an effect? Does it work? If it then, looks still quite promising, it then goes to phase 3, which is a pretty critical step. Phase 3 are these really large, rigorously performed trials, really designed to see, does a new drug or does a new medication work? Is it effective or not? And if it is effective, that's usually the point where drug companies might then decide to apply for registration and potentially market the drug. Phase 4 is a bit down the line. Once it's been used by a larger population of patients, you can look at longer term data. But phase 3 is really the critical step that we'll be focusing on. But I'll mention a couple of trials today using this framework. So it's good to kind of understand that. I'll start with FSHD. So it's the third most common muscular dystrophy. As we know, it presents often with asymmetric facial, upper limb, lower limb, abdominal muscle weakness. The cause of FSHD can be quite complex, and I'll try and break it down a little bit because it is helpful to understand what causes FSHD in order to understand why certain drug development decisions have been made. So in FSHD, or in healthy individuals rather, on chromosome 4, there's this really complex area of the DNA called the D4Z4 repeat region. You can see it's symbolized by these repetitive triangles. Within this repeat region, there's this gene called DUX4, symbolized by the smaller teal triangles. And the DUX4 gene in healthy individuals is turned off. So the DUX4 gene doesn't do anything in adult muscle. And that's because it's usually has lots of methyl groups attached to it, and that's symbolized by these blue circles. The methyl groups turn off the DUX4 gene, you have a healthy individual. In FSHD, this methylation is reduced. You can see less of those blue circles. As a result, the DUX4 gene gets expressed, and we know it's the DUX4 gene that seems to cause the muscle inflammation and muscle damage. And I guess knowing that this is the pathway that causes FSHD, this is why different drug companies have taken different strategies. Some will look at designing drugs to repair the myelination. Some might try and design drugs to get rid of the DUX4, and some might design medications to target the inflammation or try to repair the muscle damage. And so we'll talk about some of the trials. And here are the is the overview of the major current and forthcoming trials in FSHD. There are lots and lots of medications in the preclinical phase, and in fact, too many for me to talk about individually, although that is an exciting thing that there are just so many things in the pipeline. But I'll be focusing mostly on these big pharmaceutical companies with their agents or their medications in phase 1, 2, and 3. But before I get to that, I'll talk about this drug called losmapimod, because until last year, this was like the forerunner. This was in phase 3 just recently in the last few years. And I think a lot of people were quite excited that there was a lot of promising data on losmapimod. So it was an oral drug, and it was proposed to reduce this DUX4 expression, which, as we spoke about, drives FSHD. And the early phase trials seemed to suggest that the patients with FSHD taking this drug seemed to show slower rates of decline and less fat infiltration in the muscle. So it all seemed quite promising. But remember, the phase 2 trials are smaller trials, and really we want to see drugs succeed in the phase 3 stage in order to be really confident that there's definitely an effect. And unfortunately, in this case, when it got to phase 3, there was actually no difference compared to placebo. And as a result of that, the drug company decided not to develop it anymore. And I don't present this just to be a downer, but really just to emphasize that early phase trials, phase 1, phase 2, can show really promising results. And I think that's really great and reason to be hopeful and reason to be optimistic. But I think also to take some of those early phase trial results with a grain of salt until they're proven in later stage trials like the phase 3. So just to keep that in mind, that for the rest of my presentation, I'll be presenting predominantly early phase trial data, which could be exciting, but take with a grain of salt. So this drug is called Delbrax. It's in phase 3 at the moment. It's a 2-part drug, and this will be a theme for the rest of my presentation. One part of the drug is this siRNA molecule that's designed to knock back or to reduce the DUX4 expression. And the other half of the drug is a targeting molecule, really designed to try and get the drug to the right cells. In this case, trying to get it to the muscle cells. Because it doesn't really make sense to reduce DUX4 in your liver or your skin or your brain when we really want to target it in the muscle. So This is an IV infusion given every 6 weeks. And actually the early phase trial results, again, quite promising. It looked safe. It seemed to reduce DUX4. It seemed to reduce the CK level, which is this blood marker that looks at muscle damage. Patients who are on it seemed to not lose as much strength over time as patients that were on placebo. And the patients who were on it seemed to improve in the 10-minute walk time. So everything looked quite promising. But again, early phase data, so we really have to wait for the phase 3 trial, which is recruiting at the moment, unfortunately in the United States and not in Australia. But I think this is quite an exciting molecule, and theoretically, it makes sense. We want to get the drug into the muscle and we want to reduce DUX4. The next trial is exciting because it's in Australia. It's being trialed in Australia. So it's a molecule designed to try and get rid of the DUX4 or trying to reduce it. And in Sydney, particularly, it's the Liverpool hospital that's being involved. Unfortunately, because it is quite an early phase trial, 1-2, like I mentioned in that first slide, they're only recruiting a very small number of patients. So it might be that actually Liverpool Hospital has already recruited their allocated number. I don't know off the top of my head, but it is quite competitive because they're only recruiting a very small number of patients. But it is very exciting that this company decided, let's run it in Australia, New Zealand, first up. Whereas historically, I think as Epi had mentioned earlier, many of the big pharmaceutical companies often would just run their trials, at least to start with, in the States or in Europe. So exciting that trials are coming to Australia and New Zealand. Another drug, this time, again, ignoring the DUX4, ignoring the methylation and saying, let's just target the muscle. Can we just regrow the muscle? So this is an antibody designed to block a blocker of muscle growth. In that way, try to promote muscle regrowth. It's a subcutaneous injection. And the preclinical studies, so in the lab, it seemed to improve muscle strength and size in mice. And this phase 2 trial has just finished recruitment in these centers overseas. And again, we're waiting for the data to come out. But you can see it's a different approach. It says, well, let's ignore the DUX4, although we know it's the driver. Let's see if we can just target the muscle itself. Another drug, similarly designed to let's target the muscle inflammation directly, is this satralizumab drug. It's a drug we use in neurology for other immunologic or inflammatory conditions, and we're saying let's see if we can repurpose it for FSHD, because we know that there's muscle inflammation in FSHD, and because it's a repurposing drug, we can skip phase 1 because we already know it's safe because we use it in other conditions. Let's go straight to phase 2 and see how it goes. So that's finished recruitment overseas, and again, waiting for the results. This is a slightly different way of approaching things and quite novel. So it's a viral vector that contains a therapy that potentially can edit the methylation. So you may have heard in the news about AAV viral gene therapies. This is kind of one of those. And it contains this thing called a DCAS-ONIC system. Again, you may have heard in the news this CRISPR-Cas9 technology that edits DNA. This is similar, but instead of editing the DNA, this edits that methylation on top of the DNA, really designed to restore the methylation in this region and thereby reduce the DUX4 expression. And I think the exciting thing about this approach is that theoretically, if it works, potentially it might only just be a once-off treatment, like a one and done kind of situation. Unlike many of the other therapies that I've talked about previously, which are needed on an ongoing basis, this one might be, you just have one-off IV infusion, you turn off the DUX4 permanently, potentially, or if not forever, then at least for many, many years, and then you might be good. But again, got to wait to see if the trials kind of bear that out. The preclinical models seem to suggest that it does reduce DUX4 expression. And again, excitingly, Australia was included in this phase 1-2 trial. So it's being, in Australia, I think at least Concord Hospital as a site here in Sydney. But again, because it's quite an early phase trial, there will only be very few patients recruited, probably only 1 or 2 at Concord Hospital, to be honest. So that's the kind of exciting news. But unlike a lot of the other therapies, these AAV gene therapies, there are extra considerations you need to think about. In particular, AAV viruses are viruses that actually everyone probably gets in their lifetime. It doesn't cause any symptoms, so you don't even know you get it. And so actually, a subset of people just in the general population will already have antibodies against this virus. And if you already have antibodies against this virus, then the treatment's not going to work because you're going to already have antibodies that will fight the treatment because it's packaged within this virus. So this study that I've screenshotted here took a group of muscular dystrophy patients and showed actually 83% of them didn't have antibodies, so they were eligible for this particular strain of the virus called RH74. But that means that conversely, 17% of patients did have antibodies and they wouldn't be eligible for this kind of treatment, at least with that particular strain or that particular serotype. Another thing to consider is that treatment or enrollment in a trial with an AAV gene therapy might then limit your eligibility for subsequent trials. And that's because if you get it as a part of the trial, then you've had the virus and your body develops antibodies. So if that particular treatment didn't work and you wanted to enroll in the next AAV gene therapy trial, you may not be eligible because you may have developed antibodies from that first trial. And similarly, even if the next trial didn't involve gene therapies, sometimes trials will exclude patients with any history of gene therapy or cell therapy in the past. So things to consider and things to weigh up. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly and most pertinently in the news recently, is that there are some off-target side effects. Although AAV viruses in general don't cause any symptoms, sometimes when they're administered at high doses, like they are in these trials, they can sometimes cause a bit of liver inflammation, usually manageable, but rarely can be quite severe and fatal in a couple of cases. And you may have heard of that in the news regarding some of the Duchenne and limb-girdle muscular dystrophy AAV gene therapies recently. And perhaps Dr. AC might touch on that a bit later in her talk. Now, moving quickly to myotonic dystrophy, second most common muscular dystrophy, and it affects many, many different organ systems, not just the muscle. And again, need to know a little bit about how the disease works in order to understand the rationale for some of the therapies or some of the treatments. So again, in healthy individuals, there are these two genes called DMPK and CNBP. They've got repetitive regions in their DNA of these particular lengths, and that is fine, and that produces normal mRNA. But in patients with myotonic dystrophy, these repetitive regions are a bit longer, they're expanded, and these expansions cause the mRNA to be sticky and to generate these hairpin loops. These hairpin loops then sequester or bind up these RNA binding proteins. The RNA binding proteins then aren't available to do their regular job, which is to help with splicing of other genes, causing missplicing, and that causes the symptoms. And so again, you could imagine that the different drug companies might decide to target this process in different regions. Some might say, let's get rid of the mRNA. Some might say, well, let's restore the RNA binding proteins. Some might say, well, let's ignore that. Let's just fix the splicing. And some might say, well, let's just go to the muscle directly. So that's the kind of rationale for targeting the process at different levels. Again, here's a kind of overview of some of the trials in the myotonic dystrophy space and where they're at. There are lots of them, and I'll try and quickly skim through them, but a lot of them are quite similar to each other. The first one in phase 3 is this oral drug that is supposed to have an ability to reduce some of that sticky repeat mRNA that I talked about. It was trialed in a phase 2/3 trial, including the Children's Hospital here at Randwick, in children and adolescents with the very severe form of myotonic dystrophy type 1 called congenital myotonic dystrophy. And although it didn't meet its primary endpoint of reducing or changing the clinician-rated congenital myotonic dystrophy score, it did show some improvements, particularly in cognitive performance, reduction in the CK level, which is that blood marker of muscle inflammation, improvements in the time taken to walk 10 meters. So some positive results, and as a result of that, they're going to move on to a phase 3 trial in adult patients with myotonic dystrophy, although it's not exactly clear to me when that's planned for, but quite exciting. Particularly, it's unlike a lot of the other therapies, it's an oral drug, so quite easy to kind of administer. Another drug that's in phase 3, similar to some of the FSHD drugs, is a two-part molecule. One half is the antibody trying to target it to the muscle. One half is the active drug that's trying to get rid of that mRNA, that sticky mRNA I talked about. Early phase trials seem to suggest that it improved myotonia. You can see the gray line is placebo and the purple line is the drug, and you can see the myotonia definitely improved over time. Grip strength seemed to improve over time, so quite exciting, but again, early phase data, so we want to wait for the phase 3 data to confirm that, and that is being done in a number of countries. I think recruitment has just finished recently, so we've got to wait for the trial to play out and for the data to come out, but quite exciting. Metformin is a drug that many of you know might know is used to treat diabetes, and the rationale here is that patients with myotonic dystrophy who were taking metformin for their diabetes, actually they studied them and found that some of that altered splicing that I talked about was improved, and so this group in France decided, well, let's give metformin to all patients with myotonic dystrophy, even if they don't have diabetes, to see does it fix the splicing and does it help with kind of improving disease progression. This is another two-part molecule, again, a targeting molecule to get it into the muscle and a molecule to try and get rid of that sticky mRNA I talked about. Again, early phase data showed that the myotonia and muscle strength seemed to improve. The 10-meter walk time improved, so quite exciting, quite promising. But again, waiting for phase 3 data. A different two-part molecule, and in particular, instead of using a molecule to target to muscle, this company decided, let's use this oleic acid molecule, which doesn't just target muscle, it targets most different types of cells, which is important in myotonic dystrophy because we know it affects the heart, we know it can affect the brain, we know it can affect the pancreas and cause diabetes. And so excitingly, this molecule might then target multiple organs, whereas perhaps those other molecules that were targeted to the muscle wouldn't affect the heart, etc. Again, mouse studies seem to suggest that it helped with the muscle strength, and waiting for some phase 1 and 2 data overseas to come through. Another two-part molecule, again, early phase trial running. Importantly, this one is in Australia, unfortunately not in New South Wales. So some of our patients are going up to Brisbane or going down to Melbourne to participate in this trial. So exciting there. This, again, another two-part molecule. You can see that that's a theme, trying to target it to the right cells and then trying to get rid of that toxic sticky mRNA. And again, this one is still in early phase and is being run overseas. Another single molecule, this time again running in Australia and New Zealand. That same company that I mentioned before that was running the ARROW-DUX trial is running this ARROW-DM1 trial. And again, Liverpool is the site for that trial, at least here in New South Wales. This mirrors that AAV therapy I was talking about in FSHD. Again, it's an AAV-mediated therapy to try and knock down the sticky mRNA. Seem to be promising in animal studies, and these early phase trials are running overseas. And again, possibly the promise of being a once-off kind of treatment compared to all of the other treatments, which would be administered on a recurring basis. And then lastly, again, a different approach entirely. This approach says, well, let's ignore the sticky mRNA, let's ignore the missplicing, let's just focus on the muscle and seeing if we can regrow the muscle or encourage the muscle to grow better. And this is in phase 1, but very early phase 1 trials. So first in human, and in fact, they're only, I think, trying it in healthy volunteers down in Melbourne. But if that gets through, then maybe it'll get to phase 2 and phase 3 eventually. So far, I've really only talked about drugs, and there are other treatments, like we heard about exercise from Dr. Rekha previously. So there is a trial of a structured exercise regimen in myotonic dystrophy type 2 occurring overseas. But I think, as we heard about just before, really a tailored, personalized approach to exercise is important. And then so far, we've mostly been focusing on treatments that can slow down progression. But we also know that treatments to help symptoms are important as well. And so there are these 2 trials that I haven't delved too much into, but essentially, some patients are on this drug called mexiletine, which helps with the myotonia, but it's usually a 2 or 3 times daily dosing. And so this company has decided to produce a prolonged or extended release version of the mexiletine to see if it can be dosed once a day. So that's in trials. And then this trial is looking at this drug called pitolisant, which we use in neurology and sleep medicine for patients with narcolepsy. They kind of just fall asleep all the time, and trying to repurpose it for the excessive daytime sleepiness that we see in patients with myotonic dystrophy. So that's shown promising results in phase 2 and is moving to phase 3. So really just some quick conclusions. I think it's a really exciting time for neuromuscular research. There are so many clinical trials going on, whereas 10, 15 years ago, there was really nothing in these areas. So I think really exciting. And I think it's good that these different companies, these different research groups are targeting the disease from different points of view, trying to target different mechanisms. And most exciting is that the trials are coming to Australia and New Zealand. And there are many more preclinical studies that I didn't have time to mention today. Promising early phase data is really exciting. It's reason to be optimistic, but take with a grain of salt. Kind of have to wait for the phase 3 data to confirm efficacy. And again, there are lots of considerations when thinking about, is participating in a clinical trial right for me? Is it right for my kids? And I think that that's never an easy answer. It's very individualized. And I think if you've got concerns or questions, discuss it with family, friends, importantly, your GP, your treating neurologist, and the clinical trial staff. And with that, I might just finish up with just some links to information and clinical trial registries. And I might pass on to AC unless there are any burning questions.
I think for the time we might keep going if that's okay. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis. That was a lot above my head, but very interesting. And thank you very much for sharing the latest in that. But yes, now we're welcoming. Sorry, Jack, I just jumped in on you. Would you like to introduce our next speaker?
Yeah, sure. So the next speaker we have here today, Dr. I.C. Kalma, would really appreciate hearing your thoughts. So we'll give it over to you to do that. Awesome.
Thank you. Just trying to share my slide. Thank you, everyone. Let me just... can you see my slides now?
Yes. Yes, okay. We can. Excellent. I haven't seen you yet, but I'm sure you're there.
Hello. Can you... Oh, sorry. Hello.
There you are. Hello.
Sorry, I think my video's on now.
But yes, no, there you go. Hello.
Thank you, everyone, for having me this afternoon. I'm AC. I'm a neurologist and a PhD candidate at the Brain and Nerve Research Centre at Concord Hospital. And it's a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. I will be giving a talk on treatment updates in Duchenne, Becker, and limb-girdle muscular dystrophies. So just as a short recap, muscular dystrophies are a heterogeneous group of inherited disorders, which generally present with weakness of the shoulder and hip muscles. So firstly, I'll focus on Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a condition caused by mutation in the DMD or dystrophin gene. So the dystrophin gene, just like any gene in the body, are codes that give instructions to the body to create proteins. And the DMD gene makes the dystrophin protein, which particularly keeps the muscle stable and strong. In Duchenne, there's a change in the code. So for example, there may be a part of the gene that's missing, and that shifts the reading frame of that genetic code. And because of that, the dystrophin protein is not made at all. And with that, muscles become weak with time. And it can affect not only skeletal muscles, but also muscles of the heart and the diaphragm, which is also important for lung function. It affects about 1 in 3,500 male births. And it's what we call a recessive X-linked disorder. So this means that boys who only have one X chromosome are more likely to show symptoms, while girls have a second X chromosome to mask that effect, and therefore they're not affected. The DMD gene is the longest human gene in the body, which then makes it prone to genetic mutations. The main therapies for Duchenne and most genetic neuromuscular disorders are mainly supportive, focusing on rehabilitation, injury prevention, and focusing on overall health with managing potential complications of the disease and the treatments. And in terms of Duchenne, the main disease-modifying therapy that we have are steroids, which are the main treatment that have been shown to delay loss of ambulation to a much later age and preserve arm and leg function. They're thought to work by reducing inflammation in the muscle and enhancing regeneration and stabilizing the muscle. But the problem with long-term steroid use are side effects, including metabolic problems, weak bones, increased risk of infections. And so, therefore, there's always a need for safer long-term treatments that slow the disease progression with better side effect profiles. Now, since the Duchenne gene has been identified in the late 1980s, research into Duchenne muscular dystrophy has driven studies in other neuromuscular conditions as well, leading to a significant work on advanced treatments, including genetic therapies for these rare diseases. So what is gene therapy in general, and why does it matter? The aim of gene therapy is to fix the problem at the source by working on the faulty gene that causes the disease. So in Duchenne, the issue is in the dystrophin gene, so gene therapy aims to replace or restore it. So there are different ways of doing this, including either delivering the functional copy of the gene, skipping parts or faulty parts of the gene to make a shorter yet functional protein, or editing the gene to correct the errors. And addressing the root cause then can hopefully help slow or stop the disease progression. Now, I'm not really covering gene silencing today, it's just in the diagram, because it is used in other diseases where the problem causes excessive protein production. So that's not really relevant for muscular dystrophy. So I'm not going to be talking about that today. Now, gene replacement uses special delivery vehicles called AAVs, or adeno-associated viruses, which Dennis touched upon in the last talk. Now, these are harmless viruses that cannot make copies of themselves independently, and they carry a new DNA strand or instructions into the cells. In Duchenne, these AAV vectors can be designed to target muscles, and sometimes including the heart, which is also affected by the disease. However, the challenge is that in Duchenne in particular, the gene is too large for these vectors. So scientists have developed what we call microdystrophin, which only contains the small critical regions of the full dystrophin gene necessary for function. Now, to date, there is only Elevidys from Sarepta Therapeutics, had been the only FDA-approved gene therapy for Duchenne, but others remain in the pipeline. Now, this is a single-dose gene therapy that has been looked at in 4 clinical trials. Now, I won't spend too much time on this slide as we've talked about this in the last talk, but as we saw, there's 4 different phases in clinical trials when we investigate a new drug. So mainly phase 1, looking at drug safety, phase 2, looking at whether the drug works in the specific condition in question, and phase 3, comparing that against placebo in a larger group of patients, and phase 4, when we looked at the safety profile once the drug is out in the market. Now back to Elevidys. Now the trials have looked at boys aged 4 to 8 who are still able to walk. What they found is that Elevidys increased microdystrophin in the muscles, and many kids maintained or even improved their walking. As a result of these findings, the FDA granted accelerated approval last year, including for non-ambulant children aged 4 to 5 years, and more trials are underway in newborns and in older boys. However, we know that there's also been some recent safety concerns that you might have heard from the news, including patient deaths, a couple of patient deaths thought to be linked to liver damage, which led to a temporary pause on the Sarepta shipments in particular. Now, the last update from a couple of weeks ago was that the shipments for Elevidys for ambulant Duchenne boys are resuming, but the clinical trials involving the same viral vector are paused. So this includes trials in Duchenne, but also in limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, which I'll talk about later. So now we'll wait to see what the future holds, not just for Elevidys, but for other AAV-based gene therapies, and seeing how the data unfolds and how the challenges are addressed. Now, there's another gene therapy developed by Pfizer using a different viral vector. There was a phase 3 trial that has already been completed on boys aged 4 to 7, which unfortunately did not meet the primary outcome of improving motor function. However, there's another new phase 2 trial, which is underway in Melbourne, at Melbourne Children's and at Westmead, looking at the effect of this drug, particularly at boys aged 2 to 4. So we'll watch this space. Now, beyond gene replacement, exon skipping therapies also offer promising treatment for Duchenne by restoring the reading frame. So here we see again what happens with Duchenne, where, for example, exon 51 is missing and the code doesn't really fit well together. Exon skipping treatments induce skipping of the faulty parts of the DMD gene to produce a shorter but functional dystrophin protein, much like editing a sentence by omitting a word, but the sentence still makes sense. The first exon skipping therapy approved by the FDA is eteplirsen, which works on exon 51 mutations, but there are other drugs that have been approved in the US and are also under ongoing clinical trials. So 2 of which are being investigated here in Australia. So first one is viltolarsen, which works on exon 53 mutations. So this was tested in a small Duchenne cohort, and they were compared to untreated boys, focusing on lung and motor functions as outcome measures. Results showed that viltolarsen was safe and well tolerated, and it improved lung function in ambulant boys and stabilized it in non-ambulant boys. And it also maintained motor function in both groups. Currently, this is being investigated in a larger phase 3 trial, which looks at efficacy of viltelazine in boys who are able to walk, with the primary outcome of the study being the ability to stand from a lying position. So we'll await the results of this trial. Casimersen is another treatment that's investigated in Australia at Westmead, Melbourne, and Queensland Children's Hospitals. So this works on exon 45 mutations. So the trial has two parts. So firstly is a double-blind placebo-controlled component, goes on from 96 weeks. So one group goes on to placebo and one goes on to the active treatment. And this is followed by a 48-week open-label extension where all participants receive the active treatment. So this trial is still ongoing, but there's been an interim result from an Italian study, a smaller group of 27 patients showing promising increases in dystrophin production in the muscle, as well as good tolerance to the drug. So we'll await the efficacy results, which we'll hopefully hear from soon when the study is completed later this year. Now, some Duchenne patients have what we call a nonsense mutation. What this means is that there is an early stop signal that prematurely stops dystrophin production, resulting in a non-functional protein. So besides exon skipping, ataluren has been looked at as a possible treatment. So it prompts the cells to ignore the stop signal and letting ribosomes, which are the body's protein-making mechanisms, to produce a complete, more effective protein. Early open-label trials suggested that the drug might delay loss of ambulation and decline in lung function, and it was first approved for Duchenne by the European Medicine Agency in 2014 and was given conditional marketing authorization. However, ataluren initially showed promise, subsequent phase 3 trials did not demonstrate efficacy of the drug, and as a result, it led to withdrawal of its conditional approval. So now, as Dennis said earlier, the key message to take here is while the phase 2 trials look promising, we need to take this with a grain of salt and wait for further efficacy trials in phase 3 studies. So now I'm just going to talk about Becker muscular dystrophy. Now, this is similarly an X-linked disorder with similar mutations in the dystrophin gene, but the degree of suppression of dystrophin is less. So this means that there's still some production of dystrophin, but the protein is still abnormal. The disease is slower than Duchenne, with the onset around teenage years. In the Becker muscular dystrophy space, researchers have been investigating sevasemten, which is a small molecule that targets muscle metabolism, and it slows down the deterioration of what we call fast-twitching muscle fiber types. And the idea is to protect the muscles from injury during contraction. Early studies with healthy and Becker patients showed promising results with good tolerance to the drug and reduced muscle damage markers such as creatine kinase in the blood. Now, currently, there is a phase 2 trial for adult Becker's patients, which will hopefully soon start recruiting in Melbourne. Now, there are other investigational therapies for Duchenne and Becker. Firstly, beyond what is under large clinical trials, CRISPR gene editing technology is also being studied in Duchenne. So Dennis has covered this a little bit earlier, but just as a short recap, it is a gene editing tool that can cut and fix DNA by removing faulty parts of the DMD gene and aiming for a permanent correction of the mutation. Now, these edits are usually delivered using viral AAV vectors, similar to current gene therapies. And early studies in mice, dogs, and humans show promising results with restoration of dystrophin production in the muscle. Now, although more testing is needed, we hope that gene editing offers hope for hopefully a one-time long-term treatment for a number of neuromuscular conditions. Now, in addition to gene therapy, research is also moving towards studying alternatives to current steroid treatment. So vamorolone is a steroid-like drug which is chemically modified with fewer side effects compared to prednisone, but maintaining the anti-inflammatory properties. So in Becker, the research still is in the early stages, with only looking at mouse studies suggesting that the drug could be effective and that it warrants further investigation in humans. In Duchenne, vamorolone has already been tested in boys aged 4 to 7 who could walk, measuring how quickly they could stand and looking at the distance they walk over 6 minutes and comparing the results to untreated Duchenne patients. they found that compared to placebo, which is the gray line, vamorolone led to improvements in the boys' walking distance and how quickly they stand from a lying position. They also found that when the boys transitioned from prednisone to vamorolone at 24 weeks, they maintained the strength that they gained. So the progress was just as good as those boys who had been on the vamorolone from the beginning of the trial, showing that vamorolone can potentially replace prednisone without any loss of benefits. Now, there are other treatments in the pipeline being investigated, but so far, these are mainly occurring in the US, that these target other pathways in Duchenne. And so we're hopeful and look forward to hearing about these studies in the future. So now I'm just going to switch gears and talk about limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. So limb-girdle muscular dystrophy is a heterogeneous group of more than 30 skeletal muscle disorders, which predominantly affect the shoulder and hip muscles in a similar way to Duchenne and Becker. In some subtypes of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, the heart muscle may be involved, and the inheritance can be dominant or recessive, which can affect the symptom onset. Now, typically, limb-girdle muscular dystrophy is slowly progressive, similar to Duchenne and Becker, and management is predominantly supportive. However, there's been recently a lot of work being done in therapeutics, which is very exciting. Now, while there's no cure yet, there are studies within the early phases that are rapidly evolving across several fronts. There's been early studies looking at stem cell transplants, exon skipping therapies, gene editing, and delivery of functional gene copies through gene delivery. The challenge with Duchenne is that right now, only a small number of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy subtypes are being studied in trials. And as I've mentioned in the previous slides, the limb-girdle muscular dystrophy is a group of many different conditions, with each caused by a different gene. So researchers are first starting their work with the more common types, such as calpainopathy, which I'll talk about in the next slide, with the hope that the knowledge that we gain from these trials and experiments will hopefully help us understand and find treatments for the other subtypes as well, although this will take some time. So starting off with calpainopathy, CRISPR technology is being investigated for this limb-girdle muscular dystrophy subtype. So calpainopathy is the most common subtype, which is caused by mutations in the CAPN3 gene, responsible for making a muscle repair protein called calpain-3. Now, when this gene is faulty, muscles can't repair themselves properly, leading to gradual weakness. Research is still in the early stages, but researchers have used CRISPR to successfully edit the CAPN3 gene in the stem cells derived from a patient with calpainopathy, and then turning them back into healthy muscle cells, showing that this technology could be further investigated and progress in further trials. In terms of studies on exon skipping treatments, this is being looked at in dysferlinopathy, which is also among one of the more common subtypes of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy caused by mutations in the DYSF gene. Early studies have shown that there may be a missing part of the gene called exon 26, which could potentially be a target for exon skipping therapy. So far, these are all in the preclinical stages, so we'll watch this space. Now, when it comes to gene delivery, there are a few AAV-based gene therapies in the pipeline that are now in clinical trials. Gene therapies for limb-girdle from Atamio and AskBio are progressing in their early stages for some rarer subtypes of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. But with recent liver-related deaths in the Sarepta trials, as I've mentioned before, these are currently paused. So we need to watch this space and see how the data evolve. But so far, these the trials for Atamio and AskBio had been ongoing, so we'll watch this space and see how the data unfolds. And finally, just to move away from genetic-based therapies, another treatment under investigation is BridgeBio's formulation of ribitol, which is a sugar-based alcohol that's being studied in limb-girdle muscular dystrophy 2I. Now, this is caused by a change in the fukutin-related protein gene, which is important for keeping the muscles stable when they contract. In early mice studies, they found that ribitol improved how muscles looked under the microscope and how well they worked. There's early phase 2 human clinical trials, and they found that patients who had ribitol had a 70% drop in CK levels, which is a marker of muscle damage, and also an increase in the key muscle protecting protein called alpha-dystroglycan in the muscle. So now the treatment is being studied in a larger phase 3 trial, including a site at Royal Brisbane Children's Hospital, and we're hoping to see or eager to see where ribitol can make a difference for this subtype of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. And just to finish off, as we hopefully move towards more targeted therapies for genetic disorders, we may see a growing demand for AAV vectors in gene treatments. We are already using AAV treatments for other conditions like spinal muscular atrophy. But as Dennis has covered in the previous talk, there are patient-related considerations when it comes to thinking about AAVs and particularly enrolling patients in AAV trials. And therefore, it's important to put patients in the center of the broader context of planning for the future of AAV treatments. The current demand also begs the question of whether is it feasible to have an AAV facility here in Australia? And with this, it's important to consider other external factors as well, such as thinking about choosing the right location, developing the right infrastructure and technology, training skilled professionals, and collaborating with local and global experts. And as we saw, the Neuromuscular Registry is particularly important to facilitate these collaborations. And also, it's important to think about the cost aspect and ensuring that regulatory measures are in place. So there's still a fair bit of work to do, but excited to think about how this may all progress in the future. So in summary, there's a real momentum in neuromuscular treatment with many promising new therapies and clinical trials coming to Australia. Gene therapy offers hope for Duchenne, Becker, and some limb-girdle muscular dystrophy subtypes, but remain cautiously optimistic as we continue to learn about its long-term safety and effectiveness. There's early CRISPR trials in limb-girdle and Duchenne that could also hopefully help other neuromuscular conditions as well. There are also emerging non-gene-based treatments like sevasemten in Becker, vamorolone as a potential alternative to steroids, and ribitol in limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. However, with progress comes challenges. These treatments are still in the early stages and access to trials remain limited, especially with these rare diseases. But it's still exciting to see that progress is happening, and hopefully these advances will continue to bring us closer to more effective treatments for these neuromuscular conditions. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Kalma and Dr. Yao. A brief sort of round of applause. I know we can't hear anything, but really thank you for sharing all those insights. And we'll go to questions, but I personally wanted to say that it makes me really hopeful that there's lots of research happening, even if some of them are in the earlier trials, and if some of them haven't shown, the outcome of interest for the phase 3 trials. With that, I'd love to go to questions. The first question we have from BJ, and that is, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing any of these names incorrectly. I think some of the names for drugs and conditions sometimes goes over my head, but is there any research for Mioshi myopathy in progress involving Australian patients? Do either of you have an answer to that or any insight?
I don't have any knowledge off the top of my head, but maybe I'll share my screen and I can show you what I do on a kind of day-by-day basis in the clinic, because there are more than 300 different genetic myopathies, so it can be hard for us to keep a track of how where the trial status is up to for each of those 300 different conditions. So this is one of the websites that I think I linked, and I think maybe Dr. Karma also linked on our slides. It's called the Clinical Trials Registry, clinicaltrials.gov. And so if you want to put in your condition, let's say Mioshi myopathy, and you could restrict it to Australia, and you could restrict it to just different phases, or you could restrict it to just interventional trials. Let's do that for this example. And you can go search. Essentially, it should spit out any trials that are being run in Australia at the moment. So it looks like there aren't any moment, but if we got rid of Australia, we could see, dysphalanopathy, so not quite the same. I guess Mioshi is a type of dysphalin, but that one's completed. So unfortunately, not at the moment. But I suppose if you extended it to dysphalin, that might extend the number. So sometimes you have to play around with the wording if they've labeled it differently. And again, trying to look for active trials. That's
a great tool, Dr. Yao. We might need to move on, just timing wise, because we don't want to lose everybody at 4:30. But we'll put that link to that website in the notes for the session, if that's okay with you. But what a great tool to use. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. There was one other question, Jack.
There's one other question. I feel like it's answered in the same sort of way. It's basically, are there any clinical trials going on for G&E myopathy or Nonica myopathy? And maybe it would be best if we can share a link then. If either of you two have like a guide that maybe we could share with people just so they can get an idea of how to navigate that platform, that would also be awesome. But with that, I'll hand it back to Carolyn for the next phase.
Thank you so much, Jack. And big thank you to Dr. Yao and Dr. Karma. Thank you so much, guys. You make science understandable, which is the goal for today. So well done. And thank you very much for all your commitment to research in the neuromuscular space. It's truly, you know, I think I can speak on behalf of everyone to say we're truly grateful for your brains and sharing that with our community. So thank you very much. It's very exciting times with all this research happening. So well done. Thank you. All right, we have one last session for today, and I believe it's a speed session, Jessica Henry. not speed dating, but perhaps speed presenting. I'm going to hand over to my wonderful CEO, Jess Henry. Jess only came into the role earlier in the year, but is doing a great job in taking the lead of our organisation. Is going to tell us all about what MD New South Wales can do for us. So hand over to you, Jess. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And it's day one back from 2 weeks leave for me today, which is why the sun's out as well. My brain has taken in a lot of information this afternoon, and what a fabulous session it's been. I want to say thank you so much to Carolyn and Jack and to all of our speakers today for sharing your time and expertise. I know that I'll take a lot away from it, and I hope you will too. We've been around Team MD, I call us Team MD, I should say Muscular Dystrophy New South Wales has been around for a really, really long time. We've been around for almost 70 years, and we've been supporting the neuromuscular community in New South Wales throughout that time. We support in many different ways, and it has evolved a little over time, but we are supporting in many different ways. At the moment, it's through 3 key ways, which are camps and retreats. Camps and retreats, and they're camps for children and young people, fully accessible, filled with lots of adventure and designed to build independence and capacity. For many kids, they're the highlight of the year. They're one of my highlights as well. And it's a place through joy. And I know Chris mentioned before that that Levi has formed friendships through that. It's a really wonderful experience, and it's wonderful to see the kids grow through that. We also deliver Peer Connect, and today's session is part of Peer Connect. So well done, Carolyn, who leads our Peer Connect function, for bringing all of that together. We also deliver not just things such as NIRD, but if you've seen the Peer Connect calendar, there's many more activity to come throughout this year, and we're able to provide many different types of support through that. Whether it's learning, sharing experiences and whatnot, there's always something there for somebody from a Peer Connect perspective. The third way that we're providing support now is through support coordination. We're a registered NDAS provider, and our support coordinators have unique knowledge in supporting the neuromuscular community and neuromuscular conditions. So I know that they do a fabulous job as well. The other way that we provide support to the community is through lots of information, providing information and referral. We've talked a lot about our programs. We've talked about our programs and services that we provide. Sometimes you might just need some informational guidance, whether it's a new diagnosis, whether it's changing condition. What does it mean, and what services can you turn to? Well, that's where we come in. Contact us. We'll connect you with services and information. You'll feel supported. I have heard that you feel supported through what we provide, and you'll be contributing. You'll be gaining lots of information, as will we as well. We also contribute to creating new knowledge, and I wanted to specifically mention this because our last session with Dennis and AC was actually through some of the research that we are delivering, or we're not delivering, we are sponsoring through PhD scholarship. So well done, and thank you to Dennis and AC for delivering your updating us today. It's fabulous information. I know that it was very, very interesting for me. If you're looking for practical resources, we've just refreshed our website, and if you haven't had a look at it recently, make sure you do. There's a lot of information in there. It's a really good, good information. I'm not sure if we've got the website address that's up, but it's mdnsw.org.au, so make sure you take a look at that. We hear lots from our community about the value of the programs that we offer, whether it's through camp and mum's telling us about unlocking adventures for her sons that she never thought would be possible, that they are gaining confidence through attending camps, they're gaining independence, and they're building friendships. And again, as Chris mentioned before, Levi is one of those guys who's building friendships along the way and learning along the way. We deliver our adults retreats as well. We've heard that that gives people connection, resilience, and a real sense of positivity out of what they can achieve and what people can do together. And we also have lots of feedback over time about our Peer Connect program, which is swapping ideas, sharing laughter, gathering resources, or just spending time with each other. If you're not already connected with MDNSW, you are now, because you joined us today. There's a place for you no matter where you are at in your journey, whether you're a member of the community, whether you're an individual with neuromuscular condition, a carer, whoever you may be, you are all welcome in our community. If you're already connected with us, tell other people about us. Tell everybody about us. The more people we have in our network, the stronger we'll be, and the more we'll be able to deliver to our community. I want to say thank you again for your time and support today, and in the longer term as well. We really value your support, and I want to now hand back to our awesome MCs, Carolyn and Jack. Back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess. And I just wanted to say I have been involved with MD New South Wales for the last year and have gone to a few wonderful events, and obviously involved in this session as well. So I would definitely recommend getting more involved.
We haven't scared you off yet, Jack. That's good to know.
No, you haven't scared me off.
And now you're getting given roles like this. Look what can happen.
I know. It's crazy how things change. But yeah, if you want to get involved, either you're someone with a condition or you're a family member of someone with a condition, there's lots of things you can do if you just express interest and attend. But with that, we have reached the end of NIRD 2025. And I wanted to just thank briefly all of our speakers and everyone who has actually joined us here today, and for being such an engaged audience. It's been great to see you all here. And with that, I'll hand back to Carolyn to close us out.
Thanks, Jack. You've been an awesome MC. I better watch it. You're going to take my job soon. That's the idea. So I want to retire one day. Jess, thank you for that great words and lovely slideshow of all the amazing programs that we do offer. So yes, I do encourage everyone to have a look at the Peer Connect calendar, get involved. And if you've got a suggestion for an activity, I'm all ears, because I'm planning 2026. So yeah, maybe that karaoke session is going to get up after all. Also, there is a survey from today. Can I please beg everyone to spend 1 minute doing my wonderful survey? Well, it's not a wonderful survey yet, but it's critical feedback, positive feedback, honest feedback. Any feedback at all is good feedback. So we need to report the work that we do to the funding bodies that we're very grateful to receive funding from. And we also want to know how to improve our programs. And the only way we can do that is hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for your comments, your engagement, your questions. And joining on a Saturday, let's face it, on a very sunny Saturday afternoon in Sydney, which is unusual. We really appreciate it. We're going to have a family photo now. For those of you who would like to join in the family photo, please share your camera. And those of you who would like not to, we're going to say thank you and goodbye. We would love to have a family photo with all our friends out there in the, oh, hello, Anuja and Jane and everyone. Oh, it's going to be like the Brady Bunch, seeing everyone on the screen, isn't it? But yeah, thanks everyone. We'd love to have a photo that we can show what we did. Hello, Alex. I haven't met you, but nice to see you, mate.
All right.
Hello.
Some big smiles now, everybody.
Yeah. Tell us when you're ready, Maddie.
3, 2, 1. Hold on. Yeah. I got it. Confirming, I got it.
Awesome. Huge thanks to our lived experience panel, to all our excellent speakers. Jack, you did wonderful. And Maddie, thanks for all your help in the back end of the world and doing all the tech. We really appreciate it. Don't think we had too many technical glitches today, which may well be a first. So well done, everybody. Enjoy your evening and go the Tigers tomorrow. See ya. Bye.